I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our fancy warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. Again, I want to welcome you here to the show. My name is Dave Beatty. I am one of your hosts. For the years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. Worked on a few things that some people have heard of, such as Batman Incorporated, Justice League of America, and Flashpoint Wonder Woman. But enough about that. I want to welcome back my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks, hopefully watching or listening at home, some of the fun things that you have worked on as a creative professional.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, not Bass God. That's Bass God, like a bass guitar. And in addition to my co-hosting duties here on the Retro Rogues Live, I'm actually the associate producer of a feature film called Occupants, which was directed by my good friend Russ Emanuel, who happens to be on the show tonight. Russ, can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey everybody, how's everybody going? Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think you made a really awesome associate producer on my film Occupants.
Yeah, then that's currently available, as I like to say all the time on this show, that's currently available for free on Tubi. And you have another film that's available on Tubi right now, don't you? You have another feature film that's currently streaming on Tubi, don't you?
Yeah, there's actually I think there's two or maybe three. American Whisper, which is my latest feature film, and all the features I done with my producer Howard Nash. So big shout out to that wonderful man. But our first two ventures, our first two features that we did together as producer director, is Heaven's Messenger and Big Shots, and they're both also on Tubi TV. So yeah.
And Heaven's Messenger, which I was actually involved with, I was actually cut from that movie. That was originally titled PJ, right? That was originally called PJ for quite a while.
Originally, yeah.
And
But
so
I think
Heaven's Messenger, correct?
Yeah, I think it has a deeper meaning, if you will. So,
and that's actually the first time that you worked with Robert Picardo, right? Isn't it the first time that you actually directed him?
Yes, that's the first time. And since then, I think it's been 6 times that I've had the honor of directing Bob Picardo. That would be Big Shots. So that's number 2. The Legends of Nathaya, number 3. The Restoration of Paradise, which is my documentary I did on the Bolsa Chica wetlands. He was the narrator. This is number 4. Occupants, the one that you were involved in, Eric, number 5. And then the latest one is The Assassin's Apprentice, which he was on with his co-star, Marina Sirtis, who was Counselor Troy on The Next Generation. So.
Yeah. Now, my only involvement with The Assassin's Apprentice actually was as a backer from the crowdfunding. I can't remember if we did Indiegogo or Kickstarter on that project or both at one point or another, but I actually was a backer on that. And of course, that's one of the big reasons that you're on here today is that you have a crowdfunding campaign going on right now, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately.
Let's just say that I'm very happy that the crowdfunding's going well, but it is quite a lot of work to run a crowdfunding campaign. I'm very fortunate that we have people like yourself who, have my back, and I do appreciate that. It's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong; it's a lot of work. Every one of these crowdfunding campaigns, and the first one that we did was Occupants, actually, and that was probably 6 years ago. I guess it's 2014. My God, it was 2014. Wow. Well, that goes to show I feel old. But that said, 6 years ago was my first crowdfunding campaign. And I think since then, we've done several Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And I think for the Assassin's Apprentice, we did both. I don't know which part that you were involved in. To be honest, because
I supported both. I supported Assassin's Apprentice and Assassin's Apprentice 2.
There was a sequel. There was a sequel, which now is in post-production. And just want to do a shout out, this guy, Paul Hickman. Good old Paul Hickman. He's the head of TAA Corp, as we like to call it, which is the Assassins Corporation that's in the Assassin's Apprentice 1 and 2. He is the creator of the Assassin's Apprentice. So big shout out to Paul.
Yeah, I got to hang out with Paul when we premiered The Assassin's Apprentice out in Los Angeles. Remember? I out there. I met his wife, his daughter. We had quite a time. And also, speaking of crowdfunding, Dave, you and myself, we did a crowdfunder not too long ago. Remember,
Yes,
related to Occupants, we did the official Occupants comic book tie-in.
Yes, and if you look at
go good with that.
So if you look at this campaign that Eric has on the screen right now, and you look and you go into the actual campaign, if you scroll down, you'll see the link to our comic book tie-in campaign. I put the campaign. Yeah, you have to go all the way down though.
All the way
There's
down.
Olivia. So just here, that's our official poster you just saw. You saw Olivia Dabo, who
I love this poster, by the way. I'm very proud of how this poster came out.
So this poster, by the way, we are printing 50 of these for anybody who wants the signatures of our 5 named actors, including the 2 you see on here, Sean Kenny, who was crippled Captain Pike on Star Trek, the original series, and Olivia Dabo, who is a Star Trek alumni. She was a female Q in The Next Generation, but she was also on Star Wars, Wonder Years, Law and Order: Criminal Intent, Conan the Destroyer, I think. So, she is. Those are our 2 leads. We also have Tracy Coco, who was Lieutenant J, featured background actor on The Next Generation. Kelly Maroney, who was the cheerleader in Fast Times of Richmond High, and then Eileen Dietz, who was the demonic Pazuzu in The Exorcist. The quintessential horror film from the 1970s. So those are our 5 name actors, and they're actually signing those 5 posters. So that's actually a perk that's now available starting today, actually, like literally 2 hours ago. So
that's really cool. So basically, you can get this awesome poster, and it's going to be signed by all the principal sort of name actors, right?
Yeah, they were gracious enough to do this for the campaign. They didn't have to, but they knew what we need. I mean, there's a reason we are running this campaign. So for anybody, just a background, we actually already filmed. We filmed a majority of it. Eric was part of it. Eric is one of our executive producers, which, Eric, thank you for being one of our executive producers. But the fact is, because of COVID, there was a lot of restrictions, and it was imposed by the Screen Actors Guild, because Screen Actors Guild is the actors union, if you will. And if you're having an actor like Olivia Dabo, you have to go with the Screen Actors Guild. And if you go with the Screen Actors Guild, then there was a lot of things we had to do. That's like a COVID compliance officer. We had to have his assistant. We had to have air filters. If you remember those air filtration units, yeah, pricey. We had to take COVID tests. We had PPE kits, including hand sanitizers. We had hand sanitizing stations too, which was kind of fancy, I guess, but expensive. Yeah. But yeah, the costs were pretty enormous, and that's the reason we're doing this, because we need finishing funds. It says right there, finishing funds. And that's really what we're raising the money for. So, part of it is to cover the over expenses that we had during principal, and the others is editing, sound design, sound work, visual effects, and music. So, we need those elements, and those elements cost money. So that's why it says 20,000. So it's not like I take 20,000 and I book my trip to Aruba tomorrow.
Exactly.
We really do need this money. So anyway, but that said, you get these perks, and one of them is this poster. So if you go all the way down, you'll, getting back to the reason that I, was asking you to scroll down, you will see the link to the comic book tie-in we did for Occupants. And to be honest with you, I would love to do that for this film too, because there's just so much potential here. Yeah, you see all those perks. There's all those perks. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to find the link to the old Occupants comic book tie-in.
If you go right there. Oh no, up just a little more. Right there. So one of these campaigns is right there. It says the comic book tie-in. There we go.
There we go. I see it.
Yeah. So that we raised $9,135 for that campaign. If I'm remember correctly, it was like 200%.
There we go. Yeah, it says further background on me. I've run several successful crowdfunding campaigns over short films and comic book tie-in. Here are the links below. There we go.
Yeah. So these are the campaigns I either ran myself or I was definitely involved in, because these are all my films,
Right.
All of them are my films. I've directed each one of these. The comic book tie-in, I think I wrote it, but it's definitely was based on my feature film Occupants. And yeah, Dave Beatty here.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. And it was because of Eric.
So you can see a little bit better. There we go. Occupants case 285. That was one of the successful campaigns that you've got listed there.
Yeah. And it's because of you, Eric. You're the one who suggested that. So before that, I'd be like, what's that?
It was an interesting process. That was an interesting process. Yeah, I was officially the co-publisher and editor for that project, and I'm very proud of it. I wish the Dave and I have lamented many times. We do wish that the book, was more available than it is, because it was a very, very low print run that we did of this book, because it was basically just for our backers, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was never meant to be commercial, because if we did it commercially, unfortunately, we had to, make deals with like Bob Picardo, so and the other actors, of course, because all the people, I think we drew how many people? One of the perks was a cameo, right? Yeah, all of these people you see are actually real people. They're not.
There's not a single non-named like cameo or person or walk-on or bird or dog or cat, or every single one of these people, everything you see, every single one of these people supported the project and they were drawn into it. But literally there is not a, because usually when you draw characters, you just kind of make something up and you don't worry about it. But I mean, every single being in this book is someone who actually supported this project, or someone paid for them to be in this project.
Yeah.
For example, I'm trying to find it. I can't find it, but there's actually a shot. There's a couple of birds flying on a panel, and someone actually paid a sponsorship tier so they could have those birds in this book.
Yeah, they did. They did, didn't they? Yeah, let's bring you back.
I'm not joking.
I know you are. I know you are.
Hard to tell, but yeah, there's a bird right there. Someone actually paid to have that. It's kind of hard to see actually here, but there's a bird flying right here, and someone actually paid a sponsorship tier to have that bird drawn into this book. It was interesting.
That was, but it was definitely an unforgettable experience. I'll put it that way, and I definitely enjoyed doing it. I definitely want to do more. And that's what we're trying to do with Staycation. Staycation. Honestly, there's a lot of franchise potential, and I definitely want Dave to draw something that's related to that. I think that $9,122 looks like suspiciously almost the amount that we raised for the comic book tie-in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we get more than that though for this. That's what we want. But yeah, unlike for this campaign though, people can actually pay for cameos too, but they're not going to be drawn into the film. They're actually going to be filmed, or their photo is going to be in there. So we have those perks available. You can get a DVD copy. You can get a in-universe T-shirt. There's a T-shirt perk based on a cigarette brand that we created called El Gatos. And El Gatos Cigarettes is owned by, well, I guess me, because I formed this company, and I guess I paid for it technically. So we own it, all of us. And yeah, you can get one of those T-shirts. So if you scroll down, you can see it's somewhere down there. That's kind of, there we go. El Gato cigarettes. Yeah. Oh, and I just want to give a shout out also to one of our soon-to-be contributors. And I asked him if he wanted this. His name is Jesse Marcel. So, Jesse. And I think his grandfather.
Thank you, Jesse. We appreciate that. I appreciate the support.
I think if I remember correctly, and Jesse, I'm sorry if I'm getting the story butchered. And but I think his grandfather discovered the Roswell UFO. aircraft.
And we got a comment from the Rogues
Hi,
Gallery
Jane.
there.
Hi,
Jane was
Jane.
saying it's great to see you on here tonight, Russ.
Jane is a early supporter of this crowdfunding, and I definitely appreciate you, Jane. Thank you so much. And great to see you in a photo. Yeah. So
You were talking about the fact that you're looking at sort of a franchise potential type of property, and in a way, of course, this already is a franchise because this project, Staycation, is directly related to another project that's already been completed that you worked with Dave on called Routine. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So Routine started this whole, I guess, ball game, if you will. And what happened was at the beginning of this year, at the very beginning of this year, before the lockdowns and any of that, before we thought COVID was going to be, as serious as it is now, I invested in a camera package. It's a 6K resolution, was a Panasonic Lumix mirrorless camera. And what I was thinking was, I want to make my own films, right? I never really owned my own camera. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to invest because, right now, most things are outputted at 4K. A lot of people, consumers, have 4K televisions. I mean, they may not know it's 4K, but it's 4K. And that really is, I think, what distributors are looking for now. So I was thinking, you know what, let's go a little bit ahead of that, and let's get a 6K resolution camera. And that way, then we can output it in 4K. We could also do visual effects if we have to in 6K and parcel it down to 4K. For instance, a drone shot, like it's in the air, and let's say there's wind and it kind of shakes. So you stabilize that footage, and then you have a 2K area that you can work with, and you can shrink it down to stabilize the footage. You could also punch in on a shot if you wanted to, because again, you're outputting in 4K and you have an extra 2K to work with. So that was the plan. And then COVID struck. Of course it struck, and it shut down everything. The Screen Actors Guild was shut down. The restaurants were shut down. Gyms were shut down. The movie theaters were shut down. Everything was shut down. So what we did was, okay, what can we do? I have this camera, right? And we have to do something with it. So Emil Harris, my filmmaking partner since, 2002, he's basically been involved on every one of my films, feature films, short films, any of them, the web series, all of it.
He filmed Occupants, the one who filmed Occupants.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was there. He was the DP of Occupants. He was the DP of American Whisper. He was the editor of both of those films. And he obviously is doing both of those jobs on Staycation and Routine, but he was also the writer. He's a very good writer. So, basically he came up with the story, and our good friend Paige Laurie Posel graciously said, you know what, I'd be happy to film during COVID. And she's not of the Screen Actors Guild, although I think she should be, but because of that, we were in the clear. So basically it's just the three of us. That's it. It was a 3-person team, and they came to this place here, and this is where we filmed, in my condo.
Studio Russell,
because there's no other place to film. Nobody will allow us to rent a location. So I'm like, okay, I guess we'll film at my place, and that's what we did. Now, technically, you're not supposed to be filming outside, and we literally didn't. Maybe one scene, but it was very quick. But what I was thinking was, you know what? Okay, so we can do, and Routine, by the way, is just like Staycation. It deals with the pandemic, which is basically we're stuck, the lead character in Routine is stuck in a home. She's stuck in a rut, a routine. Her routine is day in, day out. Nothing changes because she can't go anywhere, except when she needs coffee. And she ran out of her coffee, and nothing's going to stop this woman from getting her coffee. So what does she do? She buckles up and she gets out her ammo and everything, and she goes out. So what we did, because we could not film the third act, right? The third act was probably the reveal act and was the most expensive act if we were to film it. And I don't want to give it any really much away, but let's say it's definitely in the horror genre, and there's definitely some monsters in there. I inquired with Dave, this wonderful man here, Dave Beatty. And I said, Dave, hey, how you doing, man? He's like, uh-oh, it's that guy again. I'm like, yeah, that's right, Dave. So, you know what, Dave? I have this idea. I was thinking, would you be interested in drawing the third act of this film? And that's where this conversation started. So I think, honestly, the reason Routine has been doing so well, and it's been doing well, we got into one of the top genre festivals in the U.S. Called Film Quest, and none of my films have ever gotten in there, including Occupants. So I knew we had something on our hands. But why did we have something on our hands, right? I think one of the main reasons is what Dave did. He drew the third act, and it was really well done. And when we put this wonderful song on there by, it's called To the Moon and Back by Anna Maria, boy, I'm mispronouncing the last name. Escobar. There we go. And Tommy Huxley. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad with names. But when we put their song on there with his with Dave Beatty's drawings, oh my God, it just it's just such a a fun third act, if you will, And then of course, if anybody knows me, I love cats. And so we put a cat in there, and we put a cat in the second film. So the first cat had Charlie Kitty, and the second cat has Finley. And Finley's my good friend Janine's cat. They're now in Arizona, where in your neck of the woods. And Charlie Kitty.
Quite our neck of the woods. She's up in Kingman, which is not really that close to Dave or
She's in
myself.
The same state. How's that? She's in the same state. She's not in California, which is
a big state. It's a big state. People don't sometimes realize it's a big state.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big state. I'll give you that. Well, your neck of the woods is in Arizona. So
I do have something I could share that doesn't give anything away that Russ, you actually shared before. But this is the early rough sketch of it. This doesn't really give anything away, I think, but it kind of gives a little bit of the flavor.
Aw, there's Charlie Kitty. That's Paige Laurie Puzel's kitty. It's her cat. We drew her cat into the film. And yeah, basically the character she plays, Cassie, is a cat lover, and you could tell by the bed sheets that she has, which coincidentally were mine. But, it's okay because I like cats. So obviously I want my characters to like cats. And we basically, this is a woman who likes cats, and without really giving it away, let's just say she befriends a cat.
Yeah, it's.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, it's just that I thought this is interesting because the ones you actually see in the end credits for the actual film, the final sequence or whatever, Russ went in and did some color work on them, really kind of punched them up and really kind of brought them to life. But this is an example of the early kind of first draft stuff that I was sending to Russ. He was taking a look at and kind of going, let's tweak it, let's do this, let's do that, and it'd come back to me with some notes or some kind of input. Then I would kind of take those into consideration, do a new draft, send it back. It's like, that looks good, let's go for a final or whatever. And it was interesting too, because for me as an artist, some of my favorite opening title and end credit sequences are the ones that have some kind of a comic book influence or connection. Like, for example, of course, the Sam Jones, Melody Anderson, Flash Gordon. I love how they use a lot of Alex Raymond's original artwork in the opening credits for Flash Gordon. That's really fun. Another one I really love too is actually Return of Swamp Thing. It's a questionable movie. It's definitely a B monster movie, but I love Return of Swamp Thing. I always have. But one of the coolest things is that they actually take a lot of Steve Bissette and a lot of Bernie Wrightson's like Swamp Thing art, a lot of John Toltenbund's art, and I'm probably saying his name wrong. But they set it to Creedence Clearwater Revival's Born on a Bayou, and it's just this really fun kind of thing. So when Russ was pitching this idea to me about what he wanted to do with Routine, that is immediately what I thought of. And I thought of all these really awesome sequences. So I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll do it. That sounds like a lot of fun. So it was just an honor even to be invited to contribute. So I'm glad that people are
Oh,
seeing
no.
Routine and enjoying it. So
Oh no, the honor was mine. You're an incredible artist. I mean, I think you really took Routine to a whole new level. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think I owe you more than the other way around. So, I think you're one of the main reasons why Staycation is even in existence right now. I mean, look at this artwork. Look at this beautiful kitty, and look how desolate this landscape looks, which is really what Routine's all about. And Staycation is technically a sequel. This is the prequel. Routine is the prequel film. No, I tell you, it's your artwork, the music by our composer Vasilis Melesis, that song that I was mentioning by Anna Marie Escobar and Tommy Huxley. I mean, you put all that together with Emil Harris's writing, with the Page's acting. It's just everything. It became something a lot bigger than we originally envisioned, and it was able to be a launching pad, for Staycation. I mean, there's no Staycation without Routine. So,
There you go.
Dave,
There you go.
thank you so much.
I think one of the reasons that Routine has gotten the attention that it has is because there's been a lot of attempts that were made to film under the conditions of the pandemic, under the worst conditions of the pandemic, when it was complete shutdown. And you didn't even have the option to do what we did with Staycation, which is these very elaborate guidelines that we had to film under, having an actual COVID coordinator, having very strict guidelines, testing, all that kind of stuff. Well, there was a time where you couldn't even do that. It wasn't even an option, right? It didn't matter whether you had the money or not. Even high profile, Hollywood films and television shows have all been shut down. And so a lot of people were trying to figure out, how do I film under these conditions? And basically that's what you did a film under those extreme lockdown conditions where you didn't have the option to do what we did in Staycation. And one of the things I think is really interesting is really Dave's art, is because what it does is it kind of makes it a different kind of film, almost like an experimental film, where basically the story is not just told through the live action, it's also told through the imagery of Dave's artwork. And the film doesn't really work without it. Without Dave's artwork, it's more or less just a teaser. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But with Dave's artwork, now it's like a real story. That's what I think,
Let's just say what Dave drew, without really giving it away, would have meant that we would have had to shoot in the outside, the exterior, in multiple locations with special makeup effects. And what else, Dave? Guns?
all kinds of stuff. I mean,
David,
well, and one of the things that was fun about doing that sequence with you for Routine is that kind of like what we did with Occupants, the comic book tie-in, is we were able to take that same concept, because when Eric originally reached out to me about working on Occupants, one of the concepts and the ideas that he told me, he's like, well, what we want to do is we want to take the premise of Occupants and we want to expand it and we want to build upon it, and we want to see a larger canvas. We want to do in the comic book the things that might be too expensive maybe to film right now, but let's
we didn't have the budget to blow up Big Ben on Occupants. We didn't have that kind of budget.
So that was I took that same concept and that same premise, which reminds me of I'm a Ridley Scott fan, and I love watching documentaries where they talk about the making of films. And in Dangerous Days, which is the documentary about the making of Blade Runner, when the original script is turned in and they start developing it, one of the things that Ridley Scott kind of brings up, he's like, well, what's the world like outside? What does it look like outside? And the original screenwriter who wrote the original treatment for Blade Runner had never intended to go outside. It was supposed to be like a 1 or 2 room, kind of a small, sort of a, kind of more contained, kind of intense, kind of a film. And so Ridley Scott started asking these questions. Well, what's the world like outside? And that's when Blade Runner kind of takes on its scope and kind of it. I think it lives in everyone's imagination now because of the fact that Ridley Scott wanted to know, well, what's outside? So that was when Eric was pitching me the idea about working on the Occupants tie-in comic, I was immediately drawn to that idea. So with Routine, the thing that was fun is that it was the same thing. Russ has given me a rundown of like what the world, is like outside. And we want to amp up what we're doing. We want to further the story. So that's the other concept that I applied to that, is what Eric told me. Is like, well, let's do all the things that maybe we can't do in the Occupants feature, which I'm still holding out for a sequel. Maybe we see some of this stuff. But the idea is that, well, let's see that larger canvas. Let's see that larger world. Let's expand. Let's show these different locales. Let's take everybody around the world. Let's introduce all the characters. Let's introduce side characters. Let's, really, kind of do all this extra stuff. So, I'm taking all these things into concept, and into my mind as a concept when Russ is talking about what he wants to do with Routine. So I'm thinking, well, let's do the same thing. Let's do all these, different kinds of environments. Let's take people outside. And what I tried to do with that too is to show people not just a larger world, but to show them different kinds of places where they might be, so that you can get a sense of what, at least implied a sense of what might have happened. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you were able to give me that world, that would have been impossible to shoot during COVID. And to be honest, it would be very difficult to shoot now during COVID, even though, you can do it. It's just much more expensive.
It's much more expensive.
Yeah.
As we found out the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention this specific tier here, because this is basically the Routine tier. So for $51, you get a social media shout out from you. You get a digital download of the Staycation film, a digital download of the script. You get a thanks on IMDb from the producers, a digital 8x10 poster, which is signed by you, Russ. And then you also get a digital link to watch Routine, the prequel to Staycation. So that's $51 there if anybody's interested. Especially they're interested in the film Routine itself, get all those other perks, plus you get a copy of the film Routine.
Yeah, you do. So you get all this, and I think fortunately, if you keep scrolling down, it doesn't include one perk. Keep going. Yeah, you get a photo and video in that's a good perk. But there's this one perk that I don't think anybody's clicked. That one, the 30-minute director web chat. So please, nobody click that one.
Nobody click that. You just showed it to everybody.
You have to drone. Yeah, you have to hear me drone for 30 minutes.
Don't click on it. So.
I'm sure I'll now have the opposite effect, but I'm like, geez, wow.
But here was the one that just came out that you were talking about earlier. This is the poster with the name actors for $85. So you get a 11 by 17 inch special promo poster with Olivia Davo, Sean Kenny, Tracy Coco, Eileen. Is it Dietz? Is that how you pronounce her last name? Or Dietz?
Dietz.
And then Kelly Maroney. You get all of them to sign this beautiful poster, which again, I just have to say over and over again, I just love how this poster turned out. And I am a little bit biased because I was there when our photographer was doing that, and I was helping him do these pictures. You know what I mean? Particularly the ones with the hazmat suit and the soldier. I was there while he was doing all that. I was there while he was taking the pictures of Sean and Olivia as well. I was taking my own pictures at the time. But I just feel like the poster really pops and it really came out really well.
Oh, well, thank you. I was very, very happy with how the poster came out. And I just, this shows what the world is. This is the world of Staycation. This is the world of Routine. So what Dave introduced in I guess comic book form, is that how you want to put it? Or I don't know what the correct term is, what you drew?
Well, I mean, it's whatever you want to call it at the end of the day. I mean, I was thinking of it more as storyboards, but it is extending the story. So, it could also be, considered a comic book end credit sequence too. So.
Yeah, because it's obviously a comic book feel, but it's not a comic book because it's right in a film.
That's why I mentioned it. It really is. It really is kind of experimental when you really think about it. Because, for instance, we're going to be reviewing The Mandalorian later in this show. And in The Mandalorian, after the show, they always show the concept art. It's actually one of the best parts of the show, in my opinion, is they'll show the concept art from that particular episode. And of course, Star Wars is known for great concept art, right? That's something that's been around since the beginning of Star Wars. But that's not telling the story. That's telling us how this whole story started. You know, this was an idea that Favreau had. He sits with Filoni. He sits with this concept artist. They start coming up with ideas. That's not what happens at the end of Routine. Okay, this is not concept art. This is not storyboarding. This is actually telling the rest of the story. You don't know, you don't get to see what happened unless you watch that credit sequence. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you don't know. You know what I mean? It's implied, but you don't. The only way you get to see it is through Dave's artwork.
That's why I don't know how to classify it. Is it animation?
It's experimental. It's like treading new ground. You know?
Could it be experimental animation? I mean, I guess experimental is the best way to put it. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely something that I've never tried before, and I don't know how many films have tried before, but this was definitely thinking outside the box because of COVID. Put it that way. But whatever Dave introduced,
I think that's why people appreciate it. I think that's why you're getting awards. I think that's why you're getting into film festivals and things like that, because a lot of people have done. Like I even did a film where it was like the talking head thing, and a lot of people did that. Kind of like almost like Occupants, like found footage. That seems like a natural thing that maybe you could do under these pandemic conditions. But that's not what Routine is. Routine isn't that. Routine is something different. And I think that's why people are responding to it, because they know the conditions under which it was made. And a lot of people were trying to figure that out. How the heck do I make a film under these conditions where I basically can't film? You know, how do I make a film with in such a limited with such a limited ability to film anybody. And that's, I think, what Routine does. It's what it accomplished.
I'm thank you for saying that. I'm just very happy that it got the reception that it did. And technically, you came on board, our other executive producers came on board, and I don't think any of that would have happened without Routine. So, I meant, it starts with Dave. He started this whole thing. Dave, it's your fault.
There you go. The circle is complete.
No.
The circle is complete.
No.
Yeah, but the poster it shows. Look at this world. Look at this poster. Look at this world. Does that look like a romantic comedy here? No. I mean, I think this is worse than Blade Runner. I mean, Blade Runner was pretty dark, but this world doesn't look like it's doing pretty well. And it takes into account what's happening today, with the lockdowns, with things being closed, people wearing masks. Sean Kenny's character, he's called the masked professor in this film because he's the lead virologist. And that means he's the lead scientist when it deals with viruses. And there's a virus, pandemic that has this certain virus. But unlike in our world, and maybe, in Italy, it got pretty bad, the lockdowns. Maybe that's a good comparison. You have military presence now. You have people in hazmat suits. I mean, this is obviously, this is a world that's gone to hell. And, it's kind of a bleak picture. Whereas Routine, we made it the third act. It's a little more upbeat, I guess, in terms of the tempo, but that doesn't mean it's an upbeat world. It's still part of this world. And by the way, the character of Cassie will be coming back in the rest of Staycation. Staycation is like the first 25% of a feature. And not only that, one of also the first people to come on board, two people who basically are tied. This is the reason why we know that this is a sequel to Routine is Alan Courtwright, who plays the radio announcer on both films. And he's already recorded his lines. He's a wonderful man. Helped to promote Occupants, way back. And I think he was part of the comic book tie-in too, but he's in Ohio. And then Bill Victor Arakan. And Bill Victor, he plays Rob Peterson. And that's really the way he does it. And we wanted him to be this annoying, like I don't know, annoying jockey. Is that what they call it? A radio jockey or something? He goes, "Hi, I'm Ra Peterson," and he just really, I told him just be very annoying, and that's what he did. And so he's playing the same character in Staycation. And by the way, Peterson is kind of a running gag of all my films since Girl with Gun. There's been a Peterson in every single one of my films since Girl with Gun. And Girl with Gun was a film I did, 14, 15 years ago. So you see Occupants, you see Whisper, you see any of them. Look out for a Peterson because you're going to find one. And yeah, so, Bill Victor was joking with me. He goes, "Russ, do you think you're going to kill off my character?" I'm going, how could I kill off my running gag? You're the Peterson in this film. How am I supposed to kill you off? Of course you're going to live. So yeah, if you're a Peterson in my film, most likely you will live.
There you go. I didn't know that. I didn't actually know that you've had a Peterson in all your films.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, look at Robert Picardo. What was his character in Occupants?
Right. Yeah,
Dr.
the Peterson Institute, the whole thing there. That was actually
Peterson Research Institute.
That's
the Peterson gag. That's one of my running jokes. That's an in joke, if you will. It's running throughout all my films. I just look out for that. Oh, look at that. Oh, there he is. Peterson Research
Institute. There you go.
Yes. And that person in the glasses, well, not that wonderful looking dapper man named Dave Beatty, but the one that you just saw. And there, that's Chris Winters.
Christopher Winters.
Also my good friend. Yeah. And he was, I think he was also an associate producer on the film or an occupant.
Yes,
but he was kind enough to generate his, to give his monies to this production way early also. So Chris,
also he was a huge supporter of the book. The rear cover of the book is an advertisement for his novel. Actually, that's the rear of the book, advertisement for Chris's novel.
Invisible War. So Chris,
definitely good to put that. Yeah.
Chris Winters, you're a wonderful man, and I hope you are staying safe right now. And I think you're also in Arizona. In fact, all of you are in Arizona except for me. What's going on here?
Yeah, last I heard, Chris is in Arizona.
Everybody's in Arizona. Janine's in Arizona. You're in Arizona. Everybody's in Arizona.
I'm telling you.
What's going on?
A lot of you California people are coming to Arizona. That's just the thing.
I will be coming to Arizona in January for the Chandler Film Festival, which Routine is in. Routine is in
the Chandler Film Festival this year.
Routine is in the Chandler Film Festival, which is a big honor because it's a wonderful film festival. And
it really is.
Dave.
I honestly think, in my personal opinion, I really think the Chandler Film Festival is surpassing the Phoenix Film Festival. I really feel that way because I feel like Chandler is doing it really the right way. Like Phoenix took a very odd approach, in my personal opinion, in terms of the way they organize that particular film festival, because basically the Phoenix Film Festival is done at a strip mall, for lack of a better term. It's a large theater, but it's a strip mall. The Chandler Film Festival is done in downtown Chandler. So they involve the entire community. They involve all the local bars and restaurants. In fact, this year, they're going to be they're doing the drive-in at the local high school, right? That's where the drive-in is going to be happening at. So they really involve the entire community. And I think that's what filmmakers want. They want to feel like there's this big party going on and like the city is like theirs. You know what I mean? I think that's the way people want to feel about when they go to a film festival,
Well, I think it's this year. I agree with you. I think for January they're doing a hybrid, which is virtual. They're doing drive-in, and then they're also doing some in-screening.
That's correct.
That's what I think, at least last I heard, and that's why I'm coming out there. Number one, I love that festival. They actually were kind and gracious enough to award Assassin's Apprentice Best Action Adventure Film. Yes, and I have their trophy somewhere over there. It was such a wonderful event. And I remember a guy I met there, Fahad is his name. He saw the way I was dressed for the ceremony, which is kind of like this. He's like, you can't go in looking like that. And he started dressing me up with some of the clothes he had. And I guess, thank God he did that. Thank you, Hud, because if you hadn't, then I would have looked like crap on stage. I accepted that award because I didn't think we would win. Don't get me wrong. I did not think we were going to win. Okay. I was just happy to be there. It's a wonderful festival. What Eric was describing, the atmosphere is amazing there. And, I met some really great people there. So, I was just there having fun, but he's like, no, you gotta dress up in this. Here's, put on my sports jacket. And he gave me all this stuff and he made me look good. So, Fahad, thank you. Hope you're staying safe. Yeah.
And then I can't remember. I think it was it's probably like a couple of years ago now. I was actually a guest of the Phoenix Film Festival, and I did have a good time actually there. And I was a guest because of my work with DC Comics. They were doing something to celebrate superheroes and movies or something. I don't remember exactly what all that was about, but they actually invited me to come out. So I sat up and was in one of their areas and sketched for people and stuff. And it was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think cool. Didn't we go to your booth? I think when we were at the Phoenix Comic Con. I think
you might have. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Well,
that was fun.
Not Phoenix Comic Con, but actually the Phoenix Film Festival. They actually had me come out and set up an area, and I sketched for people.
Did you? Oh, so
yeah,
that was another event. Yeah. Okay, that was another event then.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Yeah, but I think I saw you at one of them in Phoenix, right? And I think Brian Miller color.
It was a Phoenix Comic Con. You're thinking of Phoenix Comic Con, Russ, when we actually debuted the Occupants film, because we actually debuted it at Phoenix Comic Con, and Dave had a table there that year, and that's actually when we made the deal for the Occupants comic.
That's it. Okay.
Went on the floor and talked with them, and we made the deal right then and there to go forward with the Occupants comic book.
Phoenix Comic Con, by the way, I know you were a director of that, Eric, and you had us in there, right? For Go With Gun.
That's how you and I met. I was the film festival director of the Phoenix Comic Con.
Was that Mesa?
That was back when it was at Mesa. Yeah, that was at the Mesa Convention Center. That was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we showed Go With Gun.
Yeah, that was 100 years ago, but yeah. No, it was awesome. Look, I love Phoenix Comic Con, and I'll tell you, Phoenix Comic Con gave it awarded Occupants one of his first prizes. I think the best of the festival, second place, and it's the first time I've ever won a cash prize, which they do exist, it turns out. So I got a crisp $100 Benjamin Franklin, and I'm going, wow. I guess I really made something that was good this time. No, it was great. It was a great experience. I remember, seeing all the people cosplay, taking the photos. I think I brought my Star Trek outfit. I don't know. Maybe I forgot. Maybe it was somewhere else. But yeah, we were geeking out, and I guess we met Dave, and it was such a fun event, And I kind of lament the fact that with COVID, we can't really do that right now, and I just hope it comes back sooner than later. I really do.
It really is a shame that the whole convention scene right now is basically screeched to a halt. So
yeah, because when we did that was 2016, so that was 4 years ago.
Right.
It was a different time. Yeah,
absolutely.
The Phoenix Comic Con, great memories. It's great venue. So I was just talking to the festival director, the one after you, Jacob O'Neill. Who's the one who was the festival director when Occupants got awarded. So yeah, we were just reminiscing, just about some the good old days, like we like to call it, I guess. And hopefully I see him when I come out to Chandler, so he knows I'm coming out.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be awesome. And Micah's out there. She was going to say hi to you.
Hi, Micah. How you doing? Hello.
One of my favorite memories actually is I forget. I think it was the Phoenix. I don't know if it was the Phoenix Comic Con or Fan Fest or whatever, but it was that one where I actually finished. If I remember correctly, I think I actually finished the Occupants comic book while we were having a room party.
Yeah, we actually finished. We actually finished the book at our panel. So we had a panel about the Occupants comic book tie-in at Phoenix Fan Fusion. That's what that.
That's what it was.
No. That's what it's called now. It was Phoenix Fan Fest.
Fan Fest.
Phoenix
Fan
Fest. Phoenix Fan Fusion is what it's called now, but Phoenix Fan Fest was the event at the time, and we actually had a panel. We had a ton of people actually that came in from California to be part of that panel. And we literally, Dave finished the comic book right in front of the audience. And then we had a party at the Hyatt in his hotel room after that.
Yeah, right, we did. And this was October, right? It was October like 2017, maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
I just remember because I finished it not on the panel. I think I actually finished it in the room.
Right.
No.
We literally
Yeah, it was
finished
weird. Anyhow,
literally finished it. We had a panel. You were up there on the table and everything like that. You had your computer out. You literally did like the last page right in front of everybody. Right. And then it was done. The digital version was done, at that point. And
then I think I uploaded it or something in the room party because I was sitting on the bed. I remember I was trying to finish something, and then it was done. And then for some weird reason, my room was right next to the TG Geeks, and they had been wanting to talk.
Oh man, they're awesome.
That was a great interview.
Awesome. Yeah. By the way, the TG Geeks, is a Keith and Ben. They're just wonderful people. They actually interviewed us, all of us, I think, right, for to promote the film and the comic book, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So they actually.
That's my favorite, I think, interview. I think I've ever done. It was something about the setting. It was the fact that we just finished this, big kind of momentous project. Because that was a lot of work for Russ, you and I, and Eric, and pulling that together. Because even though you think it's like, oh, well, you just got the words on the page and then you draw it, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of minutia to it. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of collaboration, and I just remember it was just a great sense of fulfillment. And it was kind of fun because I think that's the closest I've ever been to having any sense of what it must be like for an athlete, like a professional athlete. Like they finish that game, and right after they go into the little press conference right after, they change out their jersey where they sit down and go, yeah, it was a tough game, but I'm glad we won, because that's kind of what I kind of was thinking of as I sat down and I was putting the headphones and everything on, and I was like, what, this must be kind of like what they feel like, the coaches or someone, they're like, we just finished the game, and it's just a great sense of relief, but I'm glad it's over and I'm glad we won. It's just like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. So, well, I was really,
that part wasn't planned because we had no idea that they had the room next to us. That was kind of a neat thing that just happened.
Yeah. No, they're wonderful people. They actually gave a interview, written. No. It was actually a phone interview. They interviewed me right at the beginning of the campaign, actually, for this campaign. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, they've been very wonderful people, and coincidentally, cat lovers. So there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah. Well, Russ, we have gone a little bit over our allotted time, but I think that's just because we had so many memories and there's so much history between, you, Dave, and myself that we could probably keep going on for hours and hours and hours talking about all this stuff. But I do want to make sure everybody is aware of the campaign for Staycation. I have provided the link in the chat of all the different venues, which is Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. Folks, please check it out. The tiers start as low as $3. Then they go up from there. There's some definite, for $11 and get a download of the film. If you're just curious about the film, hey, do the $11 perk and get a copy of the film. They definitely go up from there. We tried to highlight this really cool perk at the $85 mark, which is the autograph with autograph of all the name actors. That includes Sean Kenny and Olivia Dabo with the poster, which I think, again, the poster I just think came out really, really well. But there's plenty of other perks out there, and really hope that folks will support the campaign.
Yeah, and for anybody who gets the $3,077 perk, you're my new best friend.
There you go. There you go. And that's the co-executive producer perk right there. So, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here. So yes,
Well,
thank
you
you.
for being on the show, Russ.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, Eric, Dave, you guys I love you guys. So thank you so much. And to anybody out there who's listening, thank you for listening to us talk for 55 minutes. So have a rest, a great show. Have the rest, the show. I hope it turns out well. I've not seen The Mandalorian season 2, so I'm not going to tune in because I don't want to.
We've had
Seems to be like a recurring theme.
Yeah.
But I know some things that happened there, but yeah, I've been I just want to save the best for last. And have a great rest of your show. Thank you so much again.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks for being on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, bye.
Have a good night. Well, that was great.
Yeah. Definitely, everyone, check out the Staycation campaign and, make some kind of a pledge of support. Help support independent film. It's a very worthwhile endeavor, and it's interesting too because Russ is trying to build a universe with this. It's not just a one and done kind of thing. He's trying to craft a universe and tell a series of stories. The thing it kind of reminds me of is what what Kevin Smith did with a lot of his films. Where they're kind of all interconnected. When you talk about Clerks and Mallrats and Jan Silent Bob, obviously, those are obviously more humor based. You know what I mean? But it's interesting. That idea of kind of crafting, kind of your own kind of cinematic universe kind of idea. Something that obviously, we've seen a lot of now with Marvel. But yeah, definitely check it out, everybody, and support independent film.
Exactly. Well said. Well said.
All right, very cool. All right, so are we going to get into The Mandalorian here?
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
All right.
Right into it.
All right, so I do have something a little different I want to do on this one tonight, Eric. We didn't have a chance to really talk about it too much. We're going to get into our initial talk about this particular episode, Chapter 15, The Believer. I'm going to read the summary here real quick. And my pop culture for tonight, if we've got a little bit of time for such, is kind of indirectly related to this. It's kind of speculation, spoiler. So we'll, maybe we'll just go right into that, and then we'll kind of go from there if that's okay with you. Okay, so this is Chapter 15, The Believer. I'm reading the summary here that came off of IMDb. Again, like all these Mandalorian episodes, the summary is very brief, everyone. It basically just says, to move against the Empire, the Mandalorian needs the help of an old enemy. So, initial impressions about this particular episode. I'll go ahead and go first, if that's okay, Eric.
Yeah, no problem.
Let me start off by saying, last episode, I was really kind of going, I don't know why we need Bill Burr. Okay. That was kind of my big thing last episode. Let me say that I thought Bill Burr did a really good job. I actually really enjoyed him in this episode. I think I enjoyed his character more in this episode than the Prisoner, which is the episode he was in before. And my overall impressions of this particular episode, it was important. They showed us a lot of important things. It definitely felt like a side quest filler episode, which is kind of weird, and a lot of people really like this one. But it did kind of have that vibe. But I picked this image for one very particular reason. The fact that Boba Fett looks like the Boba Fett toy when I was a kid, I completely freaking loved. This episode literally gets 2 thumbs up just because I just love the fact that Timmy Morrison was like, was walking around with the rifle the way Boba Fett always had the rifle back in the day. The first time you see him, he's got the jetpack and he's holding the rifle and his armor's looking all nice and freshly painted. And he literally looked like a toy I had when I was a kid. I love that. This episode gets a recommendation just to see Boba Fett looking cool. But if nothing else, I'm going to recommend it for that reason alone. But those are my initial impressions. What did you think of this particular episode of The Mandalorian?
Well, it is nice to see Boba Fett like that, like the picture that we have up here. I'm not going to lie. It is nice to see the armor kind of nice and shiny and almost new again, which makes sense. It makes sense that he would kind of finish up his armor and polish it up and try to make it look good. Although I did see another sort of controversy, if you will, that people were talking about. Dude, it looks better than it looked by an Empire. That doesn't make any sense. So a little bit of a continuity problem there, but it still looks good. I'm not going to say it doesn't look good. But I do think that point is well taken. That wait a second, it actually looks better than it looked in Empire. That's a little weird. Anyway, that's just me being the nitpicker lore guy that I am, because I'm always into the in-universe type of stuff. That said, me personally, it's really funny because Bill Burr tends to have a lot of baggage because apparently he has an entire other career as a comedian, something I'm completely not aware of. In fact, actually, my brother is a big fan of Bill Burr's comedy. And I've just never got into it. I didn't know who Bill Burr was. I just thought he was some guy, some actor that was cast in the previous episode, and he didn't really come with any baggage for me. But there is baggage based on his previous performance and what was established about the character previously. And I really felt like this episode didn't fit with the other episode. I felt like the depiction just didn't work. It was like two puzzle pieces that don't fit together. They're just like, what? This guy's doing this. This guy's saying this. This guy's acting this way. It wasn't making any sense to me. He wasn't in prison long enough for him to have some sort of people find religion a lot of times when they go to prison, right? And things like that. No, I don't buy it. There wasn't enough time for that to happen with this guy. So I wasn't very, very happy myself with his performance. I really did feel that this was very much filler, very much sort of a side quest that had two intentions for it that I can't say without giving spoilers. But there's two intentions that I saw in this episode that to me are glaringly obvious why this episode was made, why it was done the way it was. And one of them, since we've talked about Bill Burr already, was just to have Bill Burr back. It's just very clear to me that the reason for this episode, almost more than anything else, was just to have Bill Burr be back in an episode. Even though he didn't really need to be back, even though I don't think anybody really necessarily wanted him back. I mean, I know he has his fans and things like that, but I didn't see any big clamoring out there for Bill Burr to be back on this show, that he's like the breakout star. You know what I mean? He's not Gina Carano. He's not Carl Weathers. Okay. Those are the breakout stars, of the Mandalorian, So I just, that part, it fell flat for me. And then there's another glaringly obvious reason why they made this episode, and I can't say it without getting into spoiler territory. And I just didn't like it.
No, well, there you go. Like I said, I enjoyed the episode overall. And like I said, just the fact that we get to see Boba Fett looking like Boba Fett, I had so much fun with it. I'd be honest, I'll forgive a lot of sins for that. Just give me more of that, and I'll look past a lot of stuff, because all I could think of was like, wow, because literally I had the tall Star Wars figures they made back in, I think it was like around the 80s or the 70s. Like they had like Han Solo and Luke, and they came with the medallions from the ceremony or whatever, and they had Chewbacca, and they had Darth Vader. I had Han Solo, Darth Vader, and I had Boba Fett. And Boba Fett was my favorite because he reminded me most of the $6 Million Man, because the little sight thing would come down, the parts on the jetpack, the rocket pack or whatever would move. Like he had, they had the Wookiee braids that, like, it was just really fun. And he just looked like that. The whole episode I kept going, wow, that is so cool. I couldn't get past that. So there's a lot of fanboy nostalgia with me with this episode. Just because of that. You see that right there? That's cool, kids. That's cool. But I'll be honest here. I thought Bill Burr was better in this episode than the Prisoner episode, but it was a little head scratching at times. So I honestly, I thought he did a pretty good job with what he had to do. But
I just didn't buy it. I just did not buy the way the character was acting, the things that he was saying. It did not make sense with the character that we were introduced to in the previous season. It just didn't make any sense at all to me. It just didn't make any sense. From a narrative perspective, I just didn't buy it. I didn't buy it.
Well, and it's weird too, because I think if we hadn't had him that episode, The Prisoner, right? And if we had just been introduced to him this way, where he's already in he's in prison, right? He's out in the yard, working for the rebellion, trying to pay off his time. And I love that reaction he had when he saw Boba Fett. He's like, oh, for half a second, I thought you were that other guy. And then here comes the Mandalorian. I think if they had given us that without that episode, The Prisoner, I think it'd been more interesting. You know what I mean? I think his character would have clicked a little bit better. But that again, I digress. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this one. But I liked it. Obviously,
let's get into the weeds because
Yeah,
we've
okay.
already kind of started the episode anyway, which is
Yeah.
that we find Bill Burr's character basically we kind of find out what the New Republic prison, I guess, system is like, which basically it's hard labor. And ironically, what they do is they have these, which we assume is a lot of Imperial prisoners. Technically, Bill Burr would actually fall under that category as well, because he was an Imperial. He was an Imperial at one time. They're having the Imperials basically pick up all their junk. So it's like they got all these, like, this graveyard of TIE fighters, and basically what they're doing is they're just cleaning it all up, right? They're scrapping the TIE fighters and things like that, the sort of junk from this big long war, and they're salvaging that stuff. That's basically what their sentence is.
And it's interesting too because they're repurposing a lot of things. We see how they have the AT-AT walker in the background with like a crane on it again, like what they did in a previous episode. The droid to me looked a little bit again like those Imperial battle droids or whatever they had in that K2SO was, but it has like a different head and a slightly different mainframe. So you can clearly tell that one of the other things they're doing too is they're having their prison labor help them repurpose, I think, a lot of this technology in order to help kind of build the New Republic.
Yeah, that makes
sense. I think it's an interesting idea. They're trying to communicate visually. But yeah, we do find Mayfeld, Bill Burr's character. He's in the scrapyard. And I was wondering if they were going to break him out or not, but they don't. Cara Dune basically shows up. Of course, she's a marshal at the New Republic, and he's basically being remanded into her custody. So that's kind of where we kind of start things off. And then there's probably one of my favorite scenes of this whole episode. We get that really awesome shot of Boba Fett, and he's cleaned up his armor. And I just love the fact that he's standing in the same kind of pose with the rifle, the way Boba Fett always used to stand, back in the day. I love that. He's got his jetpack. It just looks amazing. I was immediately like a 7-year-old, 6-year-old kid again. I loved it. I completely love that. And then that we get the introduction to the Mando, and I did like how they did that. Well, Bill Burr's like, "Oh, I thought you were this other guy I knew." And then here comes the Mandalorian walking out of Slave One, which again, the fact that it's Slave One is awesome. And then he's like, "Oh, I guess you're here to get revenge," is what his character, Bill Burr's character, is thinking. He thinks that Mando's come all this way, maybe just to kill him. So then basically they kind of give him the deal. They're like, you can come with us. You can kind of work off some of your prison sentence and go help us do this job. And I thought it was interesting too that Bill Burr's character Mayfeld, that he actually remembers. He's like, "Oh, you mean the little green guy?" Talking about Grogu, or the child. And when he tells him what he's here to do, he kind of reluctantly goes, "Okay, I'll go along. It's got to be better than this, right?" So yeah, and then we get a shot where they're basically going off, and then they go to this. Bill Burr tells them there's this kind of, I don't remember how he describes it, but it's kind of like an outpost, an Imperial outpost. And he's like, if we go there, I can access.
Yeah, it's an Imperial refinery of some kind.
And he's like, if we go there, I can access this mainframe, and then once I'm in the system, then I'll be able to help you locate Moff Gideon's ship. Is basically what he tells them. So they go out there, and from that point, the episode kind of goes from there. I mean, they end up on an Imperial transport. In an interesting turn of events, the Mandalorian actually has to take his armor off, and for the first time, we kind of see him really kind of vulnerable. There's a fight like on the back of the carry-all vehicle or whatever, because they're trying to blow up.
I want to back up there because I think that's pretty significant. In fact, I think that's probably the most controversial aspect of this episode. We get indications pretty early on that Pedro Pascal is going to be able to show his beautiful mug to everyone again. Because we have this, for me, very awkward scene where basically they're like, "Hey, somebody needs to go with me." Boba Fett's like, "Well, I can't go with you. meaning going with Bill Burr for obvious reasons, because people are going to recognize him, right? We all know, and as far as the audience, we know why he can't be out there showing his face, because his face is very familiar. So he can't show his face. Cara Dune can't show her face because she has already been was part of the rebellion, and is also part of the New Republic. So she's going to be easily identified. Okay, and then the other assassin, she can't go. Because of the same reason. She's basically saying, yeah, I worked for the Imperials. They know who I am. They'll know my face right away. So I was very confused, because it was like, okay, I get why Bill Burr, quote unquote, needs to use his face, which, by the way, this is not a contrivance we've ever seen in Star Wars that I remember. I don't ever remember this face print idea in Star Wars, but hey, we're going with it. All right. So even within the logic of the continuity of the episode, makes perfect sense to some extent that if they're going to introduce this aspect, hey, Bill Burr's the one to do it. He was in former Imperial. Apparently they haven't changed the codes or whatever, or didn't have any reason to. That's a stretch, but hey, that we're going with it. So it makes sense that he can show his face. But then basically they come to the conclusion that the only other person that can show his face is the Mandalorian, even though, as far as we know, he's never worked for the Empire. So it's really kind of weird. And, and the other thing is, even if the Mandalorian had ever worked for the Empire, we know he doesn't take his helmet off. At least he hasn't until that moment in the previous season where he took his helmet off for IG-11 so that he could actually save him, because he was badly injured. And it's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me, like right off the bat. I know exactly where you're going with this. Like writers, I know exactly where you're going with this. I know exactly why you're doing this. And to me, it was just so contrived and didn't even make sense within the continuity of the episode. It just didn't make any sense to me. It's like, the only thing you can say is, well, they don't know his face. So as long as he keeps his face covered, he should be fine. But then again, wouldn't the other ones have been fine if they had covered their face? Wouldn't that have worked just as well? I mean, it just, I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense to me from a narrative perspective, this entire idea that he's the only one that can go in because, quote unquote, the Imperials don't know his face. Yet what happens later says, well, that's not the reason that he can go in at all. It just, I even trying to explain it, I get confused, because it just didn't make any sense to me. I just knew exactly what they were doing. It's like, well, Pedro Pascal wants to show his face. That's where this is all going. That's why this contrivance is happening and everything like that. He wants to show his face.
Well, and yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was watching it too. I do think narratively they were trying to kind of justify it, but yeah, it is something that we haven't seen before, where someone has to use their face. For example, like, with Han Solo, well, it's weird. I don't know. Like with Han Solo, should he have been able to access that interface when they were on the Death Star? I don't know. It is a weird thing.
It doesn't make any sense, Dave. I'm sorry. It just doesn't make it, even within the continuity of the episode, because first of all, they're establishing something new. This idea of the face print. Okay. That facial recognition is a big thing in the Star Wars world. It's never been a big thing before. Never. You know what I mean? It's never been something that's even been talked about in the Star Wars universe before, that they use facial recognition for everything, right? That's never been a thing in Star Wars. They decide to establish that in this episode, okay? There's nothing necessarily out there to contradict them, but they're establishing something right then and there, saying, okay, the face print is a thing now, okay? Face print is a thing. Hey, Bill Burr's character, it can make some sense because he was an Imperial, okay? So he has some sort of clearance. They apparently never got rid of his clearance. Again, I don't know why they wouldn't get rid of his clearance if he's no longer with the Empire, but hey, that's neither here nor there. At least it's somewhat plausible. This is the Imperial remnant. Maybe they don't purge their databases all the time. His ID is still going to be good. It makes zero sense that the Mandalorian's face is going to be of any use whatsoever in this cockamamie, contrived thing that they're doing. That doesn't make any sense at all. That makes absolutely zero sense, that Pedro Pascal's face is going to be of any use to them in this particular, setup at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, it's an obvious setup so that Pedro Pascal can put his face out there,
Yeah. So one of the things, getting back to the things I liked, I did think it was interesting that they had him out of armor, his usual armor, and he was wearing Imperial armor. And we see him kind of get hurt. That's kind of something that, it was just kind of an interesting idea, because it's weird, because I just always assume the man, you get so used to his armor protecting him, seeing him being a little bit more vulnerable. I don't think he hasn't been that vulnerable since probably like the first season, so I thought that was interesting. There's a really great old school Aiki throw that he does. It was really kind of cool. I haven't seen that in a movie or a TV show or anything in a very long time, just as a martial arts nerd. It's a really great throw.
That was when he was in the trooper armor. And
I'm
100% sure that was not Pedro Pascal doing any of that.
No. You know I mean? I'm not saying, yeah. But I'm just saying the actor,
because when he does stuff like that, he needs the helmet. That's when he needs the helmet, so that the other guy that can do all the martial arts stuff can actually take over. That's the kind of stuff that just drives me insane, because I'm just so like, oh, you want everybody to see your glorious, beautiful mug. You know what I mean? But when the hard work needs to be done, there's somebody else, do it on the suit. You know what I mean? And we all know it. We all know who those people are, because if you watch, the Disney Gallery shows, that there's at least two other people that are the Mandalorian. That basically it's John Wayne's grandson that does all the tricks with the guns and stuff like that. And then there's another gentleman who actually does all the martial arts. Pedro Pascal doesn't do that. You know what I mean? That's why I just don't appreciate it. But I do want to say something about that scene that I was wondering if you caught, or you had any issue with, or you even kind of saw what I saw, or I was just confused, because they're attacked by these people that the Mandalorian identifies as pirates. And literally, it's just him saying, we're being attacked by pirates. That's like the only reference you get to who these people might be. The thing is, they don't behave like pirates at all. First of all, they have very primitive weapons. They basically have like melee weapons. They don't even have blasters. They do have detonators. And what they're doing is they're blowing up the Imperial transports that are basically taking this raw material to be refined at the Imperial refinery. And that is not a pirate thing. Okay, pirates don't do that. Pirates steal things, right? That's what pirates do. Okay, they can be privateers. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, in an earlier episode, when we saw Bo-Katan, the Imperials referred to them as pirates. Well, they really are kind of pirates or privateers, because what they're doing is stealing stuff. That's what they're doing, right? They're stealing stuff for a revolution, which makes them more sort of the privateer type of pirate. But that's what they're doing, right? They're stealing stuff. These guys clearly weren't trying to steal anything. They were trying to stop the Imperial transports and blow them up with the material that was, that they were taking. They weren't trying to steal the material. They were just trying to blow it up. And then, kind of to take it even further, as this sequence happens, which by the way, I do think it's a good sequence where the Mandalorian is in the Imperial armor and he's fighting these quote unquote pirates, right? And he's fighting them. Eventually what happens is he's going to be overwhelmed, because all of these guys are they've destroyed the other transport. So now they're all singling in just on the one transport that's left. And they end up being saved by the Imperial garrison that rushes out to meet them as they're coming in. And it's sort of an ironic thing where basically even Bill Burr says, wow, you would never think, which by the way, he was probably saved by Imperial troops tons of times in his career. Never mind that. But he's like, wow, you know, who would guess being saved by stormtroopers or whatever. But if you watch that sequence, these pirates literally charge the stormtroopers with these terrible like weapons that aren't even weapons, basically. I mean, they basically have sticks, like iron bars. They charge the gates, at the stormtroopers and all get slaughtered. I'm like, these guys aren't behaving like pirates at all. They're behaving like, I don't know, maybe like an indigenous populace that's been enslaved and is trying to overthrow the Imperial remnant that's on their planet. And the Mandalorian's killing them like crazy. So I really had a problem with that because to me that didn't make any sense either. Those were not pirates. I mean, they didn't act like pirates. I mean, did you not see that, or did you see something different with that?
No, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, because it is pretty obvious that they're not really quote unquote pirates. I think that's just a descriptor that they're using, like, the Imperials or whatever. Um,
Well,
but
that's
they're
the
clearly
Mandalorian uses. Nobody else says that,
no. I know, but it's very clear that they're because they kind of set it up too that there is an indigenous people, and they are quote unquote on their land, which is actually, if we get a chance to talk about it, there's something I want to bring up in relation to that. Actually, it's coming off of the soundtrack actually for season 2. But yeah, very clearly they're not pirates. It's pretty obvious that they're some kind of an indigenous people, that this is their planet, and they're destroying these vehicles because they want the Imperials to leave. That's clearly what they're trying to do. I think it's pretty obvious.
The Mandalorian slaughtered tons of them. I just
Yeah.
want to point that out. To me, that was very weird. And I was just all like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on here? It's like, this doesn't make any sense. And it's like, to me, it really put them in a bad light. It really put the Mandalorian in a bad light. You know what I mean? That he's basically like, oh, they're just pirates or whatever. He's just doing what he's got to do. Meanwhile, these poor oppressed people on this planet, literally are slaughtered, trying to take this Imperial base. It just, I don't know. There was some sort of, I don't know if this is just bad writing, like they didn't know what they were doing, like they didn't realize this doesn't make any narrative sense. If these are pirates, their actions don't fit, that moniker at all. It doesn't make any sense. Just really rubbed me the wrong way. And like I said, the implication to me is that the Mandalorian basically slaughtered a bunch of freedom fighters just to accomplish a silly mission,
Well, and I think that might have been, they might have actually shot that with one intention, saying that, well, these are the people that the Empire has taken their home from, right? And then they go, well, this just doesn't kind of work. And then maybe the whole pirate thing was kind of like a band-aided afterthought.
I see. That's exactly, I bet you what happened. I bet you that's exactly what happened. They probably wanted to do something originally where they were like, okay, this is like an uprising or something like that. But then they realized, oh, but we can't have our hero killing all these innocent freedom fighters. We'll just call them pirates, but we won't change any of the action to explain what's actually going on, Yeah, that's just lazy. I'm sorry. That's just lazy. That's lazy.
Lateef Crowder is actually the stunt performer who does the martial arts on The Mandalorian. So shout out for him, because he is the one who actually did that really awesome timing throw. It's a really old school throw. I was taught in Aikido like a billion years ago, and I haven't seen anyone do it since I was literally in the dojo back in the 90s.
I need to point out that scene, Pedro's fine with the mask.
Right.
That scene, Pedro's fine with the mask.
So we get this scene. They make it to the base. There's a scene where they're trying to access the terminal. There's an Imperial commander who comes over, and it gets kind of into like a tense little thing, where he's like, I want to buy you guys a drink. But before that actually happens, of course, the Mandalorian does have to take off his helmet, as Eric was saying, in order to access the terminal, which is a little weird because we haven't really seen that before. That's been necessary.
And again, why would an Imperial computer read the Mandalorian's face, Pedro Pascal's face? Why would it do that? How does that make any sense within the continuity of the show? I mean, we know because there's that scene where the Mandalorian speaks to the blacksmith, and she asks him point blank, have you taken off your helmet? And he said, no. He's followed the way. This is the way, okay? Because his clan does not believe in removing their helmet. And if he had removed his helmet, there's an implication that he would be extracized from the clan. You know what I mean? That basically she's checking in with him and saying, hey, I know you're doing this stuff, blah, 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 but have you maintained the way? And that is the way. You keep on the helmet. So there's nothing I can conceive of that would make him have access to the Imperial database with Pedro Pascal's face. It just doesn't make any narrative sense whatsoever. It's just like, oh, Pedro wants to show his face. By the way, there was a interview that was done this week where Pedro Pascal actually said, no, I'm fine with the helmet. As long as it makes narrative sense, I'm fine with it. And I think it's very convenient that he came out with this interview, basically the week after he took the helmet off again for no reason other than to show his face. And I have to say this too. I have to go this far because I've seen other blogs and people like saying, "Oh yeah, this is great. Gosh, we love seeing Pedro Pascal, in his glorious mug." The acting he did without the helmet was terrible. I'm just gonna say, I think the acting he did without. If that's why he wants to take the helmet off, and that's what we're gonna get. I mean, there was almost like no emotion. There was like nothing. It was like a guy just walking around. Now, granted, you could say, oh, well, that's part of the character. He's really not comfortable with having his helmet off and stuff like that. But if that's what we're going to get for Pedro, if that's what we're going to get after all it's said and done, because Pedro Pascal wants to show us his glorious mug. If that's what we're going to get, I mean, what's the point? If he's not going to emote, if he's not going to really do something significant, all he did was basically walk up to a terminal and have it scan him for reasons that don't make any sense. And then it was like, okay. And then it was all Bill Burr. It was all Bill Burr. He's just sitting there like a freaking robot. You know what I mean? All stiff and everything like that. It's like, this is why we need to see your face. This is why we need. I'm just sorry. I just didn't buy it.
So they are able to, of course, get the information about where theoretically Moff Gideon's ship is. They have this tense exchange with this Imperial commander. And I thought Bill Burr was actually pretty good in that scene where he was talking to the Imperial commander and he starts referencing sort of this Operation Cinder. I think it was called Cinder. And eventually he actually pulls out his weapon and he shoots this Imperial commander. And this kind of starts a running firefight. Boba Fett kind of flies in Slave One. They're able to pick them up and then get them out of there. And then they decide to, there's a bit of an exchange, which is interesting. Well, Bill Burr, he's talking about how, you have to be able to, sleep at night. Like you have to be at least okay enough with yourself, right? To be, everybody's got to do what they got to do to survive. But every once in a while, there is that line, you know what I mean? That you have to do something, which I thought was interesting. We have a bit of an exchange. They decide to release him. And then I think kind of the big scene, which is where on the Moff Gideon's ship, he gets a message. This is the thing I thought was kind of a little weird, Eric, is the weird message that the Mandalorian sees him where he's kind of like trying to call him out. That was the thing I thought was a little unusual. I kind of like this scene because it's kind of fun because he's kind of giving some of Moff Gideon's dialogue back at him from when Moff Gideon showed up and said, he will mean more to me than he means more to me than you could understand or whatever. Right. And so the Mandalorian kind of gives that kind of speech back to him. And I thought it was kind of fun, but at the same point, I thought it was a little strange, the fact that he sent a little hologram and he's like calling out Moff Gideon. Did you think that was weird too? Because I assume that now that they know where he is, they want to try to do to sneak on board Moff Gideon's ship in order to get Grogu. But it definitely seems like he's like, calling him out for a fight.
Yeah, I thought that was stupid. I mean, I just thought that was really stupid. It doesn't make any tactical sense. It doesn't make any sense based on where he's at and the resources he has available versus, what we've seen that Gideon has, especially, theoretically amping things up with the Dark Troopers now, which we haven't really seen in action, but we assume can do some major damage. It's just like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would he do that? Yeah, seriously, why would he do that? This is supposed to be a bounty hunter that typically works alone and typically has to work under kind of like extreme conditions and doesn't have backup and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, yeah, I'm going to call out this guy that's running around in an Imperial cruiser and tell him my intentions. Yeah, that's really smart, Mando. Good move.
Yeah, I definitely thought that was a little strange. I didn't understand, why you would want to do that. Announce that I'm coming for you.
It's very Saturday morning cartoon. It's very Saturday morning
true.
Cartoon is what it is, and we've said that for better or worse. This is like a live action Saturday morning cartoon. And it really showed it, I think, in this episode, to me in a bad way, because a lot of things just didn't make narrative sense to me. Going back to Bill Barr's character, his transformation and his motivation, I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. This guy came across as totally irredeemable the first time we saw him, as total trash. This is a guy who didn't even have honor among thieves. I mean, he didn't even have honor among thieves. He's willing to sell out, the people that he works with for nothing, for no good reason. There's no good reason to sell out the Mando in that episode. They just do it because they're assholes. I mean, that's the impression that you get from last season. These are just bad guys who like to be bad. And I get that. I can understand the bad guy that wants to be bad. Now we're supposed to believe, oh, but he's so guilt-ridden from what he did as an Imperial, and so he decides to kill this Imperial officer, basically in cold blood, by the way, because the Imperial officer did not draw first, didn't, or shoot first for that matter. But he's just sitting there talking, and he just guns him down. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. I think there was a lot of bad writing in this episode. That's the bottom line. I think there was a lot of bad writing in this episode. A lot of corners were cut.
All right. Well, I think that's a good spot to maybe leave this particular episode, if that's good with you. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say. Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. Go ahead. All I was going to say is I do have a brief pop culture thing that actually ties into the Mando that I would kind of consider speculation. It's not really spoiler per se, but it is kind of speculation. If you want to get into that,
sure.
Let me. I need to bring up this other graphic here if I can get it to work without too much difficulty. Okay, so this is definitely kind of spoiler news here still for The Mandalorian. This is going to be pop culture news. Here in the pop culture news segment, we talk about anything that's happening in the world of the pop culture. We hope that you would find worthy of discussion. Hopefully, at the very least, that you will find interesting. That's what we would cover here in the pop culture news. Sorry, that was a horrible job, but we're going to get right into it. Okay, so this is, if you can see this graphic, if you take that banner down, Eric, that's okay. This graphic I pulled together. Someone who uses that music service Shazam was able to pull this out. This is the track listing or the musical song titles for the Mandalorian Season 2 soundtrack. Okay, this is the big leak that a lot of people have been talking about, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about here on the show on the speculation side. And some of these kind of make sense, right? Based off of previous episodes that we've seen before. A lot of them kind of make sense. The two that a lot of people are zeroing in that people think might actually be connected to the next episode of The Mandalorian is the ones that I've highlighted in orange. These are the ones that people are saying, well, they don't really fit in with the episodes that we've seen so far. One of those is this track called A Friend, and this other track that's called Rest in Peace. Now, these two are what a lot of people we'll call them the sci-fi genre punditry or whatever you want to call it. They're kind of zeroing in on these, and they're using the A Friend thing to help reinforce the argument. A lot of people believe that Luke Skywalker is going to possibly show up in some form in the next episode. I'm beginning to think that's less likely to almost impossible at this point, but there are some people that still think there's the possibility. And this track listing here for A Friend is what a lot of people are cluing into. And then there's a lot of speculation about who on the Mando's group that he's going to assemble is going to die because of this other track that's listed Rest in Peace. Now, this does have a little bit of sort of Star Wars history. I think the most notorious version of it is when they released the Phantom Menace soundtrack. And of course, it said on there, Qui-Gon's noble end or something like that. Like, it very clearly, the back of the soundtrack told you that Qui-Gon Jinn was going to die. Like, there was no way around it. It was a huge thing. A lot of people were shocked. I remember I ran out and bought the soundtrack because I'm a big movie soundtrack nut. And I love John Williams' music. And I remember I ran out and I bought that. and I was listening to it, and I turned it over and was reading the tracks. And I'm like, Qui-Gon dies? What? Like, I was kind of like, what? So there's a little bit of precedent to this, but this is what people are zeroing in on. If you look at this graphic. So what do you think, Eric? I mean, I've heard a lot of speculation. There's some people that even believe that the Mandalorian, Jin Djarin, I can never remember how to pronounce his name, that he might actually die in this next episode. So there's actually some people who think that, Boba Fett is going to be the Mandalorian moving forward.
Yeah, I've heard that theory actually, and I thought that was intriguing because I've talked about how this show was always supposed to be the Boba Fett show, and man, that would be really interesting if it actually did become the Boba Fett show. Like they just killed the Mandalorian off. And because that's so interesting and so daring, I don't think there's any chance that's going to happen because that's not what the show is. It's just not. They're not going to go there. That's just a bridge too far, I think. But I have heard that speculation. I actually think it's intriguing. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the idea of Luke appearing. I really hope that doesn't happen because I just don't see it being Mark Hamill. If they do have Luke, I think it's going to be a recast. I am against recasting any of the characters from the original Legacy films. I'm just totally against it. Not a supporter of it. So I think this does tie into something that I had wanted to talk about. In fact, that was when we were kind of talking at the same time. There's a poster thing that came out. In fact, I tagged you on the Twitter account. I think it was actually the official Mandalorian Twitter account. They were talking about there's one poster left. And the posters are all the major reveals of the season. So they're like, the Marshall guy that you really liked. He's one of the posters. Ahsoka's one of the posters. Boba Fett's one of the posters. The sniper assassin girl, she's one of the posters. All the big character reveals have had a poster. I didn't realize the Mandalorian was doing this on Twitter, that like every week, like a new character is revealed. And there's 8 characters for each episode. In other words, every episode, some sort of new big reveal happens, and there's a character that gets like a poster. And there's one left because there's one episode left. In other words, we are going to get a new character in the last episode. So, of course, I think a lot of people, they were speculating on that thread. Well, of course, who is this? And a lot of people are thinking it's Luke. It's Luke. My best guess would be Ezra. That's kind of my best guess. I think that's the one that makes the most sense. It makes the most sense, I think, with the fact that Filoni is one of the main people on this show, that he and Favreau are really kind of like hand in glove as far as running this show. It's really Favreau's overall vision, but Filoni's like his right-hand man. And obviously Filoni is being allowed to show a lot of his characters, like Bo-Katan, Ahsoka. They've actually come on, this is their debut in live action. So I think there's a precedent for it. So it seems to me, my guess would be another character from either Rebels or Clone Wars for sure. And my best guess would be Ezra. I think Ezra is going to be coming on. And I do think we're way overdue for a main character dying. I will say that too. I do think we're way overdue for that. I think the stormtroopers have been pathetic. There has been a lot of chatter about that I've seen where people are getting a little sick of it because they're like, there's no danger anymore. The stormtroopers just suck. They always just suck, and they always get killed in droves by these 4 people or 2 people or whatever it is. And it's like, we're not feeling it, So I think they're way overdue. So somebody I think has to die. I don't think it's going to be the Mandalorian. I think that's way too daring. I just don't think Favreau and Filoni will go there. But I do think somebody has to die. And as far as this next character that's to be introduced, my money would be on Ezra.
I think if they're going to reveal a character in a poster, I think it's going to be Thrawn. I think this last episode is going to show us Thrawn. I don't think he's going to be in
actually,
it a
my
lot.
pop culture, I can tell you why it's not going to be Thrawn. At least why I think.
Oh, okay. Well,
because I'm sure you're aware of the Disney Investors event, and I'm sure you're aware of the slew of projects that Kennedy threw out there. Like, it felt like almost, hey, what's going to stick? I don't know if you saw all those. There's like 8 or 10 projects they put out.
I did, and I didn't want to bring it up because I wanted to focus more on this since we're right here at the end for the Mandalorian. But the reason I think it is because I think the Jedi that's going to answer the call is going to wind up being Ahsoka after all. There'll be some reason she doesn't stick
That
around.
doesn't make any narrative sense. But then again, nothing makes narrative sense in this. So why not?
I think that honestly, I'm of the opinion that Moff Gideon is taking the child. I think he's taking the child to Camino. And they have a viable version of a clone for the Emperor, and they're trying to bring him back. And I think that Thrawn is behind this, and
Didn't
Thrawn is there.
Camino? I thought they destroyed Camino.
No, I think Camino's still around. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Camino's still around. I mean, that's what I think is going to be happening. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I just have a feeling that that's where Moff Gideon is headed. He's headed to Camino.
Wasn't that one of the stories in Clone Wars? Was that the droid army had actually destroyed the cloning facilities on Camino? I thought that was one of the story arcs on Clone Wars. Am I mistaken in that?
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen a lot of the older Clone Wars stuff.
And again, remember, I didn't watch it. You know, I just know what I've read, like on Wikipedia, or maybe I'll see like a clip or something like that. And I could have sworn that was one of the stories in Clone Wars, was that the droid army had kind of wiped out the cloning facilities on Camino at one point.
Yeah, I mean, it might have. But I'm just of the opinion that they're going to Camino, and maybe they have rebuilt some of their facilities. I'm just telling you, this is my theory. I'm not saying it's right, but I just have a feeling that Gideon is headed to Camino. He's headed to wherever they're doing the cloning, I think. But I think he's headed to Camino. That's what I thought originally. I think he has Grogu with him because that's where they're going to get, the midichlorians or the blood or whatever it is that they need. They're trying to resurrect the Emperor. And I think Thrawn is there. And I think he's there with some of his Imperial fleet. And I think that's why we're going to see Thrawn. And that's also in my mind why I think Ahsoka is going to be the Jedi that answers the call, because it's just going to tie it all together. And that way she can have her, well, I can't, can you just stay with the child? I have to go after Thrawn, don't you see, he was just here. I got to go. I don't know. I have using that Saturday morning logic, Eric, it makes total sense. So I don't know. And that's what I think could happen.
Jane said she didn't remember Camino getting destroyed, and I'll defer to Jane as the Clone Wars expert. So, because I know she knows more about the Clone Wars show than I do. Although maybe that was something that happened in Rebels. I don't know. I just seem to remember something. Or then again, maybe it was something that happened in one of the video games. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I could see the video games, because
it wasn't one of the video games that Camino was destroyed by the droid army. So. There's a lot of stuff out there when you get into the expanded universe and everything like that. So sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything. And then, of course, it's even harder to keep track of what's canon and what's not. What are they listening to and what aren't they? In fact, that I do know what was that thing, the event that Bill Barr characters was all upset about, the
Operation Cinder or something like that.
Operation Cinder. That's from the Aftermath books. I do know that. And I haven't read the Aftermath books. I just, cheated and looked at the Cliff Notes enough that I know what that event is, the Operation Cinder. And actually, that's also related to one of the, I think it's the Aftermath comic books, which I did have. In that story, basically, the Emperor had this whole plan, and he had these like droids that go out, and they basically have like the image of his face, and they basically are like messengers, and they're kind of acting like the Emperor is still alive. And there's this whole thing, and that's sort of supposed to be kind of the precursor to Operation Cinder, that basically the Emperor was going to take it with him. Like that was his plan, was like if he didn't survive, nobody survived. So he was just going to destroy everything. That's basically what Operation Cinder was, which is kind of a weird thing for them to center on in The Mandalorian, but I guess it's a bone they're throwing to, the new Lucasfilm and all that kind of stuff to to their stuff, because as you've mentioned, Dave, I think sometimes they don't know what they don't really feel like they know what their audience is. You know what I mean? It's like they're trying to check too many boxes. You know what I mean? Because it's like, hey, we got to satisfy the Kennedy folks, and we got to satisfy, the OT folks and the prequel folks, and then the new fans we've made. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many boxes they're trying to check. Sometimes it gets a little crazy, and it's hard to keep track of. But for my pop culture, totally relates to this. I wanted to talk about all these different announcements from Lucasfilm at the Disney Investors event, and it's just, to me, it's just crazy, all the stuff that they've thrown out there, and I'm just like, how much of this is even worth talking about? You know what I mean? Because how much of this is even going to happen? But directly related to what we were just talking about, this is why I think you have a problem with your theory, okay? There is an Ahsoka series coming out. It says, after making her long-awaited live debut in The Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano's story, written by Dave Filoni, will continue in a limited series starring Rosario Dawson and executive produced by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. So I feel like it would make I just feel like they're going to hold Ahsoka back because she's going to get her own show, and because she specifically said, hey, I can't help you. I'm not going to help you. And also because she name dropped Thrawn. I think obviously the Ahsoka limited series is going to be about her trying to find Thrawn. Now, maybe that's too obvious and too much sense, but I feel like that's what the show is going to be, so they're not going to do it in The Mandalorian.
Well, I'm just saying I think that we might see Thrawn, that he might be in the episode for a little bit. I understand what you're saying with the Ahsoka series, and since she said clearly she's after Grand Admiral Thrawn, that there's obviously a good chance that we won't see him. You know what I mean? In The Mandalorian.
If an Ahsoka series wasn't greenlit, I would be willing, I would be more supportive of your theory, is what I'm trying to say. Because there's an Ahsoka series coming out, and because it just seems like the lead-in is very obvious that Ahsoka is trying to find Thrawn. I just feel like they wouldn't do that in the last episode of the second season of The Mandalorian, kind of put that in there, because it's almost like it's like too much. We've already kind of established what she's doing. So we just need to focus on what she's doing in her show. You know what I mean? She's on a different mission, so she's going to be doing her thing, and, the Mandalorian's got to do his thing. That's just my thought.
Okay. Well, we'll see. The announcement that they made that I was most excited for, to be honest with you, is I thought the Rogue Squadron announcement, if it actually moves forward, that was the one to me I thought the most, looked the most interesting. I enjoyed Wonder Woman a lot. I really enjoyed the film. I thought the way they handled the announcement and Patty Jenkins talking about, her father, who was a fighter pilot who lost his life in service to our country, like that whole thing I found really compelling and interesting. And when they were first started building up for Force Awakens, they started originally talking about what Poe Dameron was supposed to be, that he was supposed to be like a Top Gun Maverick fighter pilot kind of a character, and I was really excited at that idea, because I think that idea could be great. I've talked before about one of my favorite scenes in Rogue One is when you see the X-Wing pilots show up and the B-Wing pilots, and you realize, like, hey, these guys are going to win this one, because we know they all die trying to take out the Death Star. So these guys they're going to have a win this time. This is really cool. Like, I love that idea. So I'm excited for this Rogue Squadron movie, because I like Patty Jenkins' personal story that she gave in relation to it. I enjoyed hearing about that, and I thought it was interesting that, and I love, I just love the idea of this, following a squadron of X-Wing fighter pilots, and their missions. That to me sounds like a lot of fun. I love the old Rogue Squadron, books back in the day. I didn't read them. I actually used to listen to them, actually, like books on tape. If anyone remembers that, I think now it's called Audible, but they're not a sponsor of this show. I just said that because it's the closest thing I can think of. But, I used to have a lot of those, as books on tape. And so I would listen to them while I was drawing and creating comics back in the day. That was the big thing that we used to do. So I love this Rogue Squadron idea. I think it sounds really cool.
The only problem I have with it is that I do have some love for those old comic books, and I've actually met Mike Stackpole numerous times, and he's the one who wrote all that stuff. He wrote the comic books, and he wrote the books and all that stuff. And of course, the Rogue Squadron books were all about Wedge. Basically Wedge had taken over. Luke was kind of around, but Luke had kind of moved on to do his Jedi thing, and it was really Wedge and his guys, fighting for the New Republic. I don't think that's what we're going to get. You know what I mean? Because it's just not going to work. I mean, unless they recast, Wedge Antilles, because that actor hasn't even shown very much interest in being in Star Wars. In fact, my understanding was it was like, they had to give him like an arm and a leg just for him to do a little cameo in the last Star Wars film. You know what I mean? So he just doesn't have an interest in it for whatever reason, because I think that whole premise would have been awesome. So, we'll see. It could be great. I think Patty Jenkins is a great director, so I don't have a concern in that regard. I really enjoyed, Wonder Woman. So I think she can totally pull off a big action movie and stuff like that. I don't have a concern there. I'm just a concern. This is not going to be the Rogue One I was looking for. You know what I mean? That's my biggest concern. The one that I think is actually kind of most exciting in a weird way for me right now is probably because there's just so little about it, is Rangers of the New Republic. And it says it's set within the timeline of The Mandalorian. It says this new live action series from executive producers Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni will intersect with future stories and culminate into a cinematic story event. So what they're doing is they're creating sort of this Mandalorian verse, which I think is a neat idea. One of the things that fans are throwing out there, and I kind of want to put fuel on this fire, is that there's a possibility we may see some sort of Star Wars version of the multiverse. And I don't know if we could see the Mandalorian spinning off into that, along with, Rangers of the New Republic and Ahsoka, because all of those will be tied in together. You know what I mean? All those shows are going to have some sort of tie-in together and probably culminate in some sort of event where everybody's back together. A lot of people are basically thinking that this is this Rangers of the New Republic is going to be Gina Carano's vehicle, that they're going to spin her off. Of course, you have to temper that with all the, these weird allegations and controversies about her that I think are completely unfounded and stupid, but it's out there, especially if you're listening to the people out there in the blogverse that talk about these things. They always claim that, oh, well, she's on her way out and blah, blah, blah. But Rangers of the New Republic sounds like an interesting idea, because to me, it would obviously be about people, this would be about the New Republic establishing itself. And that's something that we didn't get at all from Disney Wars. They completely ignored that. They destroyed the New Republic before it was even introduced to us. Was completely thrown away. I've always liked the idea of the New Republic. Of course, it's going to lose some of its flavor for me because I know none of the legacy people are involved with it. Carrie Fisher's gone. You know what I mean? Harrison Ford hates Star Wars and he doesn't want anything to do with this stuff. Plus, he wouldn't fit anyway. So, and neither will Luke. I mean, they established so much in Disney Wars. It's like none of them will fit into what my vision of the New Republic would have been. But I do think it would be neat to see this group of Rangers, you know what I mean? Almost like Texas Rangers or something like that, that are trying to sort of, keep the, put law and order in the New Republic, because there would be a big power vacuum, right? There, they even alluded to it in the Marshall episode of The Mandalorian, that's what happened on Tatooine. The Empire falling wasn't actually necessarily that good of a thing. And of course, on Tatooine, it wasn't just the Empire, the Hutts had fallen too. So there was like this big power vacuum. And all of a sudden, all these petty tyrants, warlords start to pop up, which is what happens. That's what happens in real life. You know what I mean? When a central government falls, a lot of times the country descends into warlordism. That happened to China after the 1911 revolution. That's exactly what happened. They had this big revolution, got rid of the emperor, and they descended into warlordism, you know? So I think it would be kind of neat to see that, you know, see these Rangers running around, you know, trying to keep the Republic together. And I do think that Filoni and Favreau might have some good ideas when it comes to doing that. And, you know, again, I kind of have that hope that maybe some of these multiverse rumors are true. And then they could kind of get around all the Disney Wars stuff and say, well, that didn't really happen in our universe. That stuff hasn't been determined yet. You know, we can kind of go our own path, and we're just sort of let go and let free. So that's the one hope I have, especially with so many shows being greenlit at this investors meeting for Disney.
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers of the New Republic sounds interesting to me. It's interesting too, this logo, because the first couple of times I saw this logo, I thought of it more as wings, but the more I look at it now, it very clearly is a star. Huh. You know, and I love, you know, one of the things they talked about too is that Dave Filoni was talking about part of the reason he didn't want the Mandalorian to take his helmet off, and some of the different things that I've read was because they considered it to be sort of like a nod to the Lone Ranger. You know, this idea that, you know, the Lone Ranger and Tonto come into a town and they help these people out or whatever. As they ride off, the person goes, "Who was that masked man?" You know, so I love this kind of a lot of these fun Old West, you know, kind of callbacks and these different ideas that they're exploring. So I think Rangers of the New Republic could be a lot of fun. And I have heard the same thing, Eric, that this may or may not be a vehicle for Gina Carano's character. I think also, to be honest with you, since it's Rangers of the New Republic, I wouldn't be surprised if Cobb Vanth is involved, and maybe some of these different characters that we've met, you know, in The Mandalorian, if some of them aren't, you know, cobbled together into quote unquote this Ranger force. You know what I mean? That goes out, you know, kind of like the old Galaxy Rangers cartoon for anyone who remembers it.
So, I was kind of thinking of as you were saying that. Yeah. Something, or even another one I think of actually is Silverhawks. Did you ever watch Silverhawks?
I loved Silverhawks back in the day. That was a really great show. I mean, it's kind of
because that's what the Silverhawks were. The Silverhawks essentially were law enforcement in space, and they were going after criminals. You know what I mean? So something along those lines, I think, could be fun. You know, I think it could be neat. And again, it's just an aspect that hasn't been explored this far, other than those little bits and pieces we get in The Mandalorian, where we have the X-Wing fighters, you know, going around from the New Republic, and they're trying to sort of, you know, pacify things and things like that. You know, so I think that's an interesting one.
I think so too, and I think there's a lot of potential with that when you look at The Mandalorian, because I've enjoyed a lot of those episodes that have kind of, like, I really liked. I told you the episode The Marshal with Cobb Vanth's character. I really liked that one, and that one was very much a Western, you know, especially with Timothy Oliphant. I mean, he just has that sort of demeanor and everything. It just, they even had almost like the showdown, you know, the draw your weapon, you know, gunfight type thing. So I think that there's obviously a lot of material and a lot of interesting ground to explore. So I think this definitely sounds like a lot of fun. So I agree. This one looks like a lot of fun too. The one a lot of people were kind of focusing on was obviously the Obi-Wan, because they announced that, you know, Hayden Christensen is going to come back and play Darth Vader. And I'm interested in that. And I think that could be a lot of fun. But this is also one of those ones, Eric, when you talk about being a lore guy, this is the one that has potentially the most red flags and, you know, warning, Will Robinson, you know, danger. You know, this is where they could start treading on canon, even that's been established in the films. So
yeah, I'm very concerned about that, to be honest with you. You know, I've always said that first of all, I'm not a Hayden Christensen hater at all. I enjoyed Attack of the Clones when it came out. You know, I understood the whininess. Anybody who's seen the way Mark Hamill depicted Luke understands the whininess. It's like, did you watch the original movies? They're whiny guys, you know, these Skywalkers, you know. So I never had a problem with that. I thought it was actually a deliberate choice, and it made sense. I never had a problem with any of his depiction. And the one thing I've mentioned multiple times is I have mad respect for him, because George Lucas was just going to throw somebody into the Darth Vader suit, and Hayden Christensen said, "Hey, it's got to be me." You know what I mean? I've been playing this guy this whole time. I got to be the guy in the suit. You know what I mean? He's all like, "Oh, you really want to do that? You know, I'm just going to find some bodybuilder guy and then treat him like crap, you know, like he did with Browse, you know?" So, Hayden Christensen did it. And I've always respected that. I think it's really cool because I like the fact that an actor can actually put on a mask and be cool with that and be in a mask and thinks that's cool and doesn't have to take it off every 5 seconds, you know? That's part of Star Wars to me. But this really concerns me because a big thing that they're talking about is, oh, he's going to not have his mask on. And Kennedy was all like, and of course it's Kennedy. Kennedy has to be the one that's saying it's like, oh, this is going to be the rematch of the century. I'm all like, Kennedy, have you ever watched any of these movies? Do you have any freaking clue about anything in Star Wars? Mrs. There's no comics, there's no books, there's no nothing, you know what I mean? Apparently to her, there really is nothing because she's all like, oh, this is going to be so cool. We're going to have Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight each other again. Even though we know they never fought each other after they fought each other twice. That's it. And we saw it both times, okay? Having them fight again doesn't make any sense at all. So I'll be honest, I'm really concerned about Obi-Wan Kenobi at this point. I think Kennedy has decided to put her tentacles into this. I think that's why they had the delays in the first place. We covered that in an earlier segment when it first happened, when the Obi-Wan show was put on hiatus, and this was before COVID struck. And all the rumors said it was Kennedy. Kennedy was upset about the scripts or the tone or whatever, and she's decided this is going to be my baby. You know what I mean? And I'm going to show everybody how cool I am. You know what I mean? I'm going to have Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fight each other. I can just see some little Filoni guy being like, but they're not. They only fought each other twice. We already saw. Well, what are you talking about? There ain't no source material. We're just going to do our own thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I don't know how if I'm going to be able to get on board on this one.
Well, the parts of this announcement I liked is I like the idea of Ewan McGregor coming back and playing Obi-Wan. And like I said, I like the idea that Hayden Christensen wants to come back and play Vader. I think that's really cool. You know,
hey, if he wants to be in the suit, I'm all for it. If he wants to take that, him, you know what I mean?
Well, see that's what I'm talking about. He clearly wanted to put the suit on before, you know, and saw that as an important thing.
He doesn't. Now it's all about, oh, we're going to show my face. We're going to show Darth Vader without his helmet on. You know, who wants to see that? Honestly, who wants to see that? Who wants to see Darth Vader without his helmet off? Nobody. It was a big deal once because we'd never seen him. And then, of course, when we saw him, he was an old man. You know what I mean? It was kind of anticlimactic, quite frankly. And then Lucas even screwed that guy because in the special edition he has Hayden in there. Remember, like, he even screwed him. He screwed Prowse. He screwed that guy. Everybody's been screwed when it comes to the depiction of Darth Vader without his helmet. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's just stop and let's just see Darth Vader in the armor. That's what we want. Just like that scene in Rogue One. That's what we want. That's what we want. We want to see Vader as Vader. Period. That's it. Is that so hard?
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything more to add to that. I feel like you kind of put a pin in that. I think that topic is kind of done. Yeah, there was tons of announcements. I think lots of other shows have covered all of this. I mean, there was lots of Star Wars shows. There was a lot of discussion too about a lot of shows actually for Marvel too. A lot of that stuff finally came out. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this all kind of comes together. So we'll just see. It sounds kind of weird, but I'm wondering how many of these things are actually really going to get made.
Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. How many of these things are actually going to get made? You know, I'm putting the last one that I'm excited about, which is Willow, and I am hoping that will be made. So I hope that, and I really hope they bring back Val Kilmer on that too, because I haven't heard any official announcements on that. I think it'd be really nice if they found a role for him in that. Yeah,
I think so too. It's interesting, you know, and here's the thing that's kind of related to pop culture that kind of ties into this, but is kind of a side announcement. One of the other things that was announced the last couple of days is that there's discussion about the fact that I think for Disney Plus that they want to do a Firefly reboot, right? I was about to
Really?
ask you to. Yeah, I was about to ask you to. I was about to ask you, Eric, to scroll up to that, Rangers of the New Republic, and just have us sit and think about that they're going to be rebooting Firefly when they're also doing Rangers of the Root. Isn't that kind of at the end of the day? Aren't these things kind of so close to being almost the same thing? What's the point? I don't know. It seemed kind of weird.
Isn't the current season of Discovery basically Andromeda? Isn't that
Yeah.
what the current season of Star Trek Discovery is?
Yeah, but that's
Andromeda.
but that's different because at least that's CBS. It's not like CBS going, hey, we're gonna do Deep Space Nine, but then we're also bringing all these characters back from Deep Space Nine on this other show, and they're all kind of on ships running around. It's like you're literally saying the same thing. You're saying you're gonna do the same thing twice because it's like. And then the weird thing too is that the Firefly reboot is not going to have any of the original people involved at all. It's like, okay, I don't know. I found the Firefly announcement to be really head scratching when they just announced almost the same thing that they're doing in the Star Wars universe. It's like you're literally doing the same thing right here. Why and what makes you think this is going to be so incredibly different that they're not the same thing?
Is it going to be on Disney Plus or on Hulu?
Yeah, I think it's going to be at Disney Plus, is my understanding. Disney announced it.
It's really head scratching. If
it
was on Hulu,
it's the same thing.
Something be like, hey, we just want to do something else along those lines for our other brand, our more adult brand, if you will, because that's the way I see it. I see Hulu as Disney's adult brand now, and Disney, of course, is the Disney brand, which is supposed to be family friendly, all ages kind of stuff. And so I could see them going that route, but if they're just going to put it on Disney Plus, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
But then there's also all that talk too, Eric, that Hulu and Disney Plus are just going to become one soon.
Well, that's stupid. If they do that, I've said it many times. If they decide to put like an adult tab on Disney Plus, they're really going to kill their brand badly, I think. And you talk about not looking at the long-term, repercussions of their actions. Like we criticize AT&T and Warner Brothers all the time about being too short-sighted. That's a short-sighted thing. That's a really short-sighted thing to do that. I think they got a good thing going. I think what they really need to do is they've got to get some better content on ESPN Plus, and they've got to make that package, really, really shine. I really think, this is actually kind of a good segue into streaming wars and just touching on streaming wars a little bit. I really think that's the best path forward for Disney is, Disney Plus, you keep, that Disney brand, that family friendly stuff. You focus on, obviously, Pixar, Lucasfilm, you focus on Marvel, that kind of stuff, real, family friendly kind of fare stuff that's meant for everybody, quote unquote. You keep that good Disney brand. Hulu, you can do some of the more adult stuff, more experimental stuff, things like that. And then ESPN, you got live sports. You know what I mean? That's what everybody wants. If you look at what people just like want, to cover all the angles, that's what it is. They want the family friendly, then they want some adult stuff, and they want sports. You know what I mean? Maybe the other thing you could throw in there is some news. If they got some sort of a news outlet or something like that, which they do. They have one. It's called ABC News. So maybe if they did something with that, or incorporated maybe ABC News, which I think already might be incorporated into Hulu. Actually, I think Hulu might already have that anyway. They might already have news content on Hulu. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's the way to go. You know what I mean? So you kind of keep your brands going. You know what I mean? And you kind of keep, because Disney is such a an iconic name, and there's so much to Disney. You know what I mean? If you ruin that brand or dilute it too much or try to do too much, I think they're really going to hurt themselves if they do that. I think they're really going to hurt themselves. You're muted, Dave.
Sorry, I hit the mute button because I was trying to bring up, because I actually have a streaming wars story for tonight, but it brought up all this stupid, really loud, like, ad or something that was playing in my headphones, and I was trying to figure out, like, where in the hell is that coming from? I still don't understand what started playing that was playing all that loud freaking music. Sorry about that. No, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just it's a story that I keep seeing come up, that there's a lot of talk about this idea that, you know, that Disney wants to somehow find a way to take Hulu, you know what I mean, and smash them together, you know. And and I can understand what you're saying. If they want the Firefly reboot for Hulu, then that makes sense. But I don't think that's the deal. I don't think that's what they were trying to do. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. But I thought it was actually, yeah, Firefly reboot coming to Disney Plus. Yeah, that's what I was seeing. Yep. Firefly reboot coming to Disney Plus. Yeah, that's what everybody's saying. So that's what I'm talking about. It's like if you have a Firefly reboot and then you have Rangers of the New Republic, you know, aren't those kind of so close to being the same thing? What's the point? Especially if you're the same company producing the same thing. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like if this is CBS going, we've bought the rights from Disney to do a Firefly reboot. Well, that's different. You know, it's or if HBO is doing it, it's different. But
it really gets to something that you talked about before, which is like, what was the point of even acquiring Fox if this is what you're going to do? I mean, it gets to the point where it's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what was the point? You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It's really odd to me because it's like you take something that you I guess in theory, I mean, you think has value because you paid for it, and then you destroy it and dilute it into something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, for lack of a better term, you Disneyfy it, you know, which is something that happens. And, you know, they've done a good job, you know, like with Marvel. I think they've done a great job with Marvel and the MCU and things like that. I think they've done a terrible job with the Star Wars films, with the exception of Rogue One. I mean, a horrible job with the Star Wars films, you know. I'm not a fan, except for Rogue One. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing over there anymore. It's starting to become head scratching because I think they have a good thing going. I really think they do. I think if they kind of just stick with the plan, as whatever it was at the beginning, you know, and just feel like, hey, we got Disney Plus, we got Hulu, we got ESPN Plus. You know, these are good brands. These are different brands. Let's make them into something, you know, and go forward. But no, it sounds like, okay, we're just going to toss Hulu in the garbage. What? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
After all that work you did to get them, you know?
Right. So I do have a quick streaming wars thing for tonight. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. It's just kind of interesting how it dovetails into some of the other things that we've been talking about. Dovetails, not ducktails into it. So I don't know if we want to do the whole streaming wars banner or not. I think I'm just going to get right into it if that's okay with you, since we're running a little long. I'm going to add this to the stream here real quick. So this is coming from comicbook.com, but I've seen this reported a couple different places. But the headline here reads, Marvel Studios reportedly developing new deals with talent in case of streaming debuts. This is by Jenna Anderson, and this story is actually from yesterday. But it says, Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has so much for fans to be excited about, especially after a slew of new movies and television series were announced during the Disney Investor Day. While the franchise's television series are set to debut on Disney Plus streaming service, many have wondered what the future could hold for its movies, especially as the theatrical landscape has been in a state of flux amid the COVID-19 pandemic. While the Walt Disney Company has maintained that it doesn't plan to release any Marvel films exclusively on Disney Plus, a new report from The Wrap hints that the company could be adding an extra clause in the event of that happening. Marvel Studios is reportedly exploring a new contract negotiations that would outline both theatrical and streaming compensation plans for MCU films for key cast and crew members. says, according to the report, this plan would only cover upcoming Marvel movies that have yet to enter production, beginning with Black Panther 2, which will reportedly begin filming in June of 2021. If you want to read more about this article, I clearly recommend just going to comicbook.com and actually reading it. But I thought this was interesting because it kind of getting into kind of more the business side of a lot of this, and seeing how it kind of connects to the streaming wars. But it's interesting because this is something I was kind of curious about as they're rolling this other stuff out. I just assumed there were negotiations and things happening that we were not privy to, because it does seem like that they're definitely making an obvious push, at least specifically with Star Wars, at least with Disney Plus. And while theatrical releases are not necessarily going away, things are definitely changing. So what do you think about this, Eric? I mean, part of it kind of makes sense because they do need those new contracts, but it's interesting that they're definitely clearly beginning now to look at, streaming as your initial launch pad, not just for these, shows, television type shows, but also for theatrical releases as well.
I think this makes a lot of sense because the thing I'd wanted to talk about, but I was axing for time, was basically all these directors and also legacy films that are really pissed off at Warner Brothers right now because they were not given any notice about what Warner Brothers was doing as far as doing, changing all of their 2021 releases to streaming and theaters combined. Apparently, I guess some of these guys, they found out from the trades. I know the director of Dune is really pissed off. Legacy is really pissed off. And what's really interesting about Legacy is Legacy actually owns the majority of Kong versus Godzilla and Dune. They actually did the majority of the financing, 75%, which is really crazy. So you're like, okay, so the distributor has that much power, basically. I mean, they didn't even really make the film. 75% of the film was made by both of these films, Dune and Godzilla versus Kong, were made by Legacy. So they really got shafted. And there's talk that Legacy is going to do a lawsuit. There is talk about that Legacy is going to sue Warner Brothers because they were not consulted. And so I think this is kind of smart. I think Disney got to see kind of Christmas future a little bit with what Warner Brothers was doing. And Warner Brothers kind of played their hand too soon. And Disney's learning from their mistake and saying, you know what? We're going to get ahead of this. And if we're going to end up doing the same thing and putting all of our stuff on Disney Plus or, whatever, we're going to have the deals in place and we're going to have the contingencies in place and we're going to dot the I's and cross the T's so everybody's on the same page. This is smart business by Disney. I think they saw what Warner Brothers did and they're trying to make sure they don't repeat the same mistake and piss everybody off.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I feel like that Disney does this kind of all the time. And along these same lines, for example, and I have two sides and I'll try to make these real quick. The first one is this, after seeing a lot of the stuff that they announced, and a lot of the information that's coming out of specifically in relation to what's going to be happening with WandaVision, Spider-Man 3, and Doctor Strange, I think yet again, Marvel, saw all these announcements coming out of Warner Brothers. Oh, we're going to bring Michael Keaton back. He's going to be Batman in the Flash movie. And oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do that. Marvel's going to beat them to the punch yet again, because by the time that DC finally gets around to actually trying to make these movies, Marvel will have already walked all over the multiverse thing, forwards, backwards, and already been done with it. And it just kills me because every single time this is what happens. DC puts out a press release or Warner Bros. Puts out a press release and says, oh, we're going to do this. It's going to be amazing. And then Marvel goes, oh, we'll just do it while you're talking about it. And then they do it. And their next movie, you look at Civil War, versus, the Dawn of Justice. You've got two heroes fighting. Well, Marvel kind of, you know what I mean? It's like, I just see this over and over again. It's getting almost, as a DC Comics fan, it's driving me nuts. It seems like they're so busy talking about it over at Warner's that they're not actually doing it. And then, meanwhile, Marvel is over here going, that's a good idea. Well, let's just do that. you know. So, and along the lines of the other thing, the fact that these, directors found out that they're not gonna that their stuff's being released in this manner, or they're finding out some news they don't like, and it's just showing up in the press. Well, welcome to the club. Comic artists and comic creators have been doing this for years. I've talked before about the fact that at one San Diego, Scott Clark and I were constantly being yanked from like meeting to meeting to meeting because they were wanting us to work on the tie-ins for the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie. They offered us, basically all of the tie-in books. They wanted us to do them. And as the day went on, the deal kind of kept evolving and changing. And in the last meeting they had was that they wanted us to do all the backgrounds. And we're like, what? Because they liked the idea of how we were using CGI and the backgrounds. And so they thought that we could have stuff so it looked exactly like the movie and would sync up or something, which it doesn't work exactly that way. But anyhow, that's was what I kept trying to explain to everyone. But anyhow, the point being is this, as far as we knew, when we came back from San Diego that year, we thought, well, we'll be doing these Green Lantern tie-in books. That'll be pretty good. That should take care of, paying for half the year, and we're going to have to figure out the rest of it. And then lo and behold, within a matter of weeks, here comes these press announcements saying, oh, here's the creative teams for the Green Lantern, tie-in comics. And we weren't involved at all, at all. So I feel you. I know we're on a different tier, but I'm just saying, I feel you. I know what that feels like. It sucks.
Yeah, that does suck. And it just kind of goes to their business practices. Again, I think that this is a good move by Disney because it puts everybody on the same page. So if it's in the contract, you can't complain. You know what
That's
I mean?
right.
You can complain that you didn't read it or whatever. If it's in the contract and they say, hey, this is the contingency for this, blah, blah, blah. We retain rights for this. Everybody's on the same page. You know what I mean? So I think this is just actually good business sense by Disney that they kind of saw the cluster of what Warner Brothers has done and said, hey, we're not going to repeat that. We're going to get some goodwill on our side and people are going to be on the same page and know what to expect.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a very good idea. Do you have anything for Streaming Wars tonight?
No, I was able to tie it into what you were talking about. I just want to talk about
cool.
all this disgruntledness on the creative side over at Warner Brothers, and also Legacy, which we haven't really talked about. The fact that Legacy actually owns the majority of two of the biggest films that they're talking about. Again, Godzilla versus Kong and Dune, and there's talk of a lawsuit. So we'll see if that story develops.
Yeah, we'll see how that all goes. It's crazy all the stuff that's going on. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. But we'll see. We'll know here pretty quick. It's interesting too because I've seen a lot of stuff. I guess Wonder Woman 84 came out today if you live in certain countries, and we won't see it until the 25th.
Oh, that's right. You're right. It did come out today. I forgot about that. December 16th. Because they don't have Disney Plus internationally, so they can only see it in the theater. That's right.
That's right. I hate when they do that. I hate it because it's like, eventually what's going to happen if you're not careful about how you're, surfing around the internet, things are going to start getting spoiled. And then here's the other thing I think is ironic too. All the U.S. apparently reviewers got their screener copies. They've already seen it and they're already putting all the reviews up. You know what I mean? And it's being released internationally. And here we are in the United States where Wonder Woman was created and born, and we can't even watch the thing yet. God, I hate it when they do this.
That's one thing that I wonder too was since it's being released internationally, on the 16th, why not release it domestically at theaters on the 16th and at least give them that week, where they have that little week of exclusivity. Why couldn't you have done that?
Because that's the thing. It's like I would have seriously considered going out to see it because I hate when they do this because this is how things accidentally get spoiled because they act like, oh, well, they're watching it over there and we're over here. No, the internet connects everybody, and then you've got all the people putting their reviews out there and it's like,
by the way,
have the Dodge stuff.
already on the pirate sites. You know what I mean?
You know it is. You know it is. And that's the thing that kills me. And if we hear at the Retro Rogues Live, like if Warner Brothers was sending us a screener or something so we could watch it and review it, that would be fun. But the reality of it is, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But to me personally, just as a fan, as a Wonder Woman fan, as a former artist who worked on Wonder Woman, as someone who's loved Wonder Woman since he was like a little kid watching Linda Carter TV show and watching her Super Friends and everything, who's really excited for Wonder Woman 84, it drives me absolutely berserk. And now I'm going to have to be extra careful while I'm on the internet, researching our show or whatever, because it's not like we've got a couple of days until the 25th. We've got an eternity. When you consider it's the 16th and the 25th, we've got an eternity that we've got to be plugged into pop culture. But watch where you're looking at, because I don't want it spoiled. I don't want it spoiled. I really don't. I was really looking forward to it.
Like I said, they could have thrown the U.S. theaters a bone, and it should be out in U.S. theaters now too. That's at least something. And then, you can wait. Then if people want to wait till the 25th to watch an HBO Go, that's fine. They easily could have done that. There's no reason why they couldn't have done that. And I think it would have made the theaters, feel some love and feel like, okay, well, we got something. You know what I mean? We got some exclusivity. It's just, I think it's mind-boggling what they're doing, because I feel like they're destroying one of their main revenue sources, and HBO Max, we'll see how this affects it. I mean, this is going to be a big deal for HBO Max to see if it really does anything as far as their subscriptions and stuff. They did make a deal with Roku. That was another thing I wanted to talk about. They did get that deal nailed with Roku because they weren't on Roku, and they finally got that done. And I'm sure that's 100% because of Wonder Woman. So in that sense, it's benefit, because I don't think they had gotten that deal knocked out with Roku if they didn't have Wonder Woman coming out.
Yeah. So we'll see. That just drives me nuts when they do that, because it's like, now I got to be extra careful. And it was interesting too, because on our local radio here in the Prescott Valley, Arizona area, as I was at my day job, they were talking and interviewing people, and the DJ, the disc jockey, was talking to different people, and they were discussing kind of the entertainment landscape and some of the things that are going on that we're talking about here, with a lot of the big announcements with the new stuff coming out of the Disney thing, and a lot of the talk about, the shift of pushing a lot of the programming onto streaming. And it was interesting how many people are lamenting and annoyed by the fact that it's like, well, if you guys are going to put it on streaming, why are we having to wait for everything for so long? That's the other thing that's kind of weird too, because a lot of these films and these properties and stuff are finished, and there is a dearth where people are like, I would like to watch some of these new movies.
Right.
A lot of people are confused about when No Time to Die is supposed to be coming out, the new Bond movie. Some people seem to think it was already out, and like, no, it's not. And see, that's kind of the problem too. It's like, if they want to move to making this stuff available streaming so people can watch it in their homes, it's like they should take some of this stuff and make it more easily available. Like right now, people are at home, they're not able to go out and do stuff, and they might like to watch some of it. And yet we're all just kind of still sitting around waiting. We're still sitting around waiting. That's the thing that I just don't understand. I feel like a part of the Mandalorian's success is the fact that everyone else is just sitting 2020 out for the most part. What have we had? We got Tenet, New Mutants, Wonder Woman here at the very end of the year, and shoring up the line, we've got Mandalorian carrying people through. That's what it feels like, So at least for those of us that are in genre entertainment anyway.
Looks like you got a standing ovation there from Brandon Scott. He's got a little, I think that's a clap emoji, isn't it? Or is it just a high?
I think it's a high. A high. I don't.
It's really small on my screen, so I'm like, I thought it was maybe like he was like saying like clap.
I will golf clap for myself. I think that's a good point. It's
but he was doing the whole.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Because that's the thing. It's like I'm kind of shocked that it really feels like that. There's all these things that are finished, and just all the studios are just going, Well, I guess we'll just sit this out and let Disney have it.
Well, it makes sense. The other studios besides Warner Brothers, it makes sense because they're still trying to figure out what they want to do with their theatrical releases. They haven't committed one way or the other. So for them, I think it makes sense. For Warner Brothers, now it doesn't make any sense. If it's done, just put it out on HBO Max. Why not?
Right. So. Yeah.
And Brandon said it was both.
Oh, okay.
He said golf clap.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling because I don't understand why it is that everyone's just sitting this out. Because I'd heard at one point
when it comes to Bond, MGM doesn't have a streaming outlet. There were all sorts of stories that they tried to sell Bond to Apple and also to Netflix, but they couldn't come together on a price. It just couldn't make it work. That's one thing about MGM. They don't have their own streaming service. So they have to rely on someone buying the film from them.
Right. All right. Well, I guess that's all I've got for this show. Do you have anything else, Eric? Or
no, I think we're good. We're a little over on time, so I'm all good.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, if that's okay, we'll just go to the outro here real quick. All right. So I want to thank you for hopefully watching and listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. If you're curious to learn more about me or see some of my design or artwork stuff or whatever, I highly recommend checking out KirbyTees.com. That's my new t-shirt company. You can see a lot of what we have going on over there at KIRBYTS.com. Maybe consider even possibly purchasing a Retro Rogues Live shirt and supporting the show here. I want to thank Eric Alexander, my great co-host, for being here on the show and providing his unique perspective. As is usual, sometimes on certain things we don't quite see eye to eye, but we're still able to have a fun and friendly conversation. Eric, please tell the folks hopefully watching or listening at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I am most active on Twitter, and you can find me there at BassGod14, at BASSGOD14. My DMs are always open. That's also the official Twitch. That's also the official YouTube. So if you do comments on there, most likely it will be me that will be responding to you. I just put out another link, and I want to thank our special guest, Russ Emanuel, a good friend and business associate of mine who was promoting the film Staycation, which is also a Bad Bob production. It was done in association with Bad Bob Productions, which is my film company. And we are involved in the middle of a crowdfunding deal. So I put the link out there one last time for everybody. If you could check it out and hopefully give us some support. And I think Russ was a great guest, and we had a lot of fun. And then from the Rogue Gallery, we got a little thumbs up there from Brandon. And then Jane said she enjoyed the show. And then she also said earlier, and we didn't get this comment, she said, there was an attempt to destroy Camino, but it was not destroyed. And with that, we'll leave her with the last word.